Chapter 306. The young man said faintly, I'm only guessing about this. I can't be sure that the other party has other reinforcements. Even their own families won't come to their aid. How many connections can the two young ladies have by themselves? What kind of powerful help can they have? As for letting that monkey go, whether it's useful or not, it's still an additional opportunity. Variables can be beneficial to others or beneficial to oneself. Let's wait for time to prove it. Yes? Sister Lan, we've broken out of the encirclement once again. We have a short time to rest. Ji Lingxi gritted her teeth. That bastard must have purposely let us go. Yu Rulan said weakly, no matter what, it's a good thing that we're out. Lingxi, your monkey, how many days has it been since he left? Ji Lingxi replied, it's been 4 days. He should be in Tiantang City by now. Sai, I don't know if this is the right thing to do. I have a feeling that this will implicate him. That person's actions are perverse, but his ability is even more formidable. Even if he comes, will it be of any use? Yu Rulan said softly, we're out of ideas now that things have come to this. We can only pin our hopes on this one and only hope. If we don't do this, it'll be an extravagant hope for us to even last until this point. If even our hearts break down, then there'll really be no hope left. Also, I hope that I can leave you with some inspiration. No matter what the situation is, no matter how hopeless life is right now, there's still a chance to meet. Yu Rulan spoke in a low voice, a glint of sadness flashing across her eyes. Ji Lingxi was troubled. If Yun Yang really came to save her, it would definitely be a good thing for both of them. However, these people were exceptionally valiant. How could Yun Yang be their opponent with his cultivation base? He would only be sending himself to his death if he came. In spite of this, if Yun Yang completely ignored her pleas for help and did not come to save her, Ji Lingxi would be filled with despair. Sister Lan, do you think that I'm conflicted? Ji Lingxi sighed. I'm hoping that he'll come, but I'm also hoping that he won't. If he comes, my heart will ache, but if he doesn't, I'll be filled with despair. Yu Rulan smiled faintly. He will definitely come. Ji Lingxi's eyes brightened. If he really comes, how can we ensure his safety? Yu Rulan said slowly, where there is a will, there will always be a way. What is it? Asked Ji Lingxi. Yu Rulan did not speak, remaining silent instead. Naturally, there was a way. I will appear and feign civility. I will first use myself as the price to let you go. If it really doesn't work, I'll die in front of them, using my death to exchange for your lives. Since he wants to marry me, he can't really force me to my death, right? That way, as long as you have a bit of buffer time, you can think of a way to escape or something else. And that is the only thing I can fight for you. It was also under such circumstances that the two of them could truly be together. Truly obtain happiness. Although it may not be very long, it ultimately depends on how you do it. But how could she say her thoughts out loud? Let's go look for something to eat up ahead. Ji Lingxi rubbed her tummy, a troubled expression on her face. I'm starving. Yu Rulan smiled. Let's go then. Let's take advantage of the time this devil has given us to rest and reorganize ourselves. Ji Lingxi carried Yu Rulan on her back and stepped swiftly into a small village ahead. Although they knew that both of them had a certain amount of time to rest, they dared not linger. If they stayed too long in the small village, they would bring disaster to the peaceful village. They had experienced something similar before. They've entered the small village? The young man stood on the treetop of a big tree on the hilltop, looking at the small village where smoke was rising from the chimneys. His voice was soft and ethereal. Yes. According to their habits, I'm afraid they'll prepare 7 to 10 days worth of food this time, the young man said. When they come out and fight each other, you must be careful not to spoil their food. It won't be fun if they fight us on an empty stomach. Yes. Less than the time it took to burn an incense stick later, Ji Lingxi sneaked out from the other side of the small village at the foot of the hill with Yu Rulan on her back. They're out. Young lord, should we chase after them and kill them? The young man watched calmly and said faintly, there's no need to be so forceful. Give them some time to recover. Try to create the illusion that they've escaped the encirclement and are safe. Wait until they feel completely safe and let down their guard before you strike. Only then can you strike their confidence and spirit to the greatest extent. Young lord is wise. The dark clouds in the sky grew thicker. The northern wind seemed to be frozen as it blew weakly. Small flakes of snow began to fall. The first snow of the year was about to arrive. Yun Yang, who had received the message that Ji Lingxi was in danger, had rushed over anxiously. Ji Lingxi was his 8th brother's younger sister, which meant that she was Yun Yang's own younger sister. Her safety was more than enough to take precedence over everything else. There was also Yu Rulan, his 8th brother's fiancée and his own 8th sister-in-law. Yun Yang had to rush over as fast as he could when both of them were in danger. The wind howled as a white cloud sped through the sky in an unusual manner. Hard snowflakes hammered into the clouds. It was a sign that a heavy snow was about to fall. Tianxian continent called such a phenomenon snowballs. If one were to look up from the ground, all one could see would be a sea of white. Yun Yang turned into the wind and sped to the rescue. He had been on the road for a whole day, but he had yet to arrive. Yun Yang was extremely thankful that he had gifted Ji Lingxi a treasured saber back then and had infused the mystical qi of the endless divine art into the saber's spirituality, facilitating the fate between Ji Lingxi and the saber. Seeing the 1,000 illusion monkey appear before him covered in wounds, Yun Yang's first feeling was that his heart was about to explode. Ji Lingxi was his 8th brother's younger sister. Yu Rulan was his 8th brother's fiancée. Something had just happened to Yun Zuyu. Before he could confirm what was going on and if there was a chance for a turnaround, Ji Lingxi and Yu Rulan had already received an alarm. Could it be that the heavens could not bear to see the 9 Supremes doing well? Yun Yang was infuriated, his heart trembling with anxiety. He did not even have the time to inform the others before he swept the 1,000 illusion monkey up and sped in the direction the monkey had pointed. It took only a blink of an eye for him to be out of Tiantang City. It was only then that he realized that Whitey 2, Whitey 3 and Whitey 4 were sleeping on him. It seemed like he had left in too much of a hurry, so he didn't realize that the Whiteys were still clinging to him due to inertia, and they were still there. The oncoming cold air caused the 3 Whiteys to tremble and open their eyes. Meow! The 3 Whiteys were dumbfounded by the current situation. How did they end up in the air when they woke up? Could they be flying now? Why was it so cold? And what were these white things that were floating in the air? Master, slow down, Whitey is so cold, meow. The 1,000 illusion monkey widened its eyes, allowing its red buttocks to be chilled by the wind to the point of being frozen. Its face, however, was filled with human-like anxiety. It had been such a long time. How was its master? Ji Lingxi was already feeling helpless and hopeless. There was almost no interruption in the battle. Hidden weapons were constantly aimed at her face. Ji Lingxi could only defend with all her might and fight with all her might. She mustered every ounce of energy she had and squeezed every ounce of energy out of her to contend with the enemy. If these people had only wanted to kill her, she might have given up a long time ago. If she could just end her life right now, it would not be a bad thing for her. However, these bastards actually wanted to disfigure her. How could they tolerate this? Being toyed with like this, it was exhausting. No matter how indignant she was, the feeling of being physically and mentally exhausted was too much to bear. Be it a marriage proposal or a forced marriage. Why did they have to hunt us down? It would have been fine if they only wanted to kill us, but why did they have to disfigure us again and again? Ji Lingxi mumbled as she ran, could it be that this bastard is not only a pervert? His preferences are even more perverted and he likes disfigured women? Yu Rulan rolled her eyes on her back. How should she put it? She believed that the other party's real goal was not to disfigure them. The so-called disfigurement attacks were probably just a method to continue pressuring them, a process to further destroy their will. They must have another goal and it must be something big. It was just that they had yet to figure it out. This girl is really resilient. The young man looked at Ji Lingxi, who was still running with all her might. Her potential is amazing. The black-robed elder beside him said with a solemn gaze, congratulations, young lord. From what we can see now, this girl's will has yet to crumble despite being in such a state. Be it her endurance or her temperament, they are all top-notch. Young lord, the benefits you will reap will far exceed our initial estimation. The young man nodded slowly and said, I think so too. This effort is worth it. What a small investment. Along with the passage of time, the snowflakes in the sky became denser and denser. The young man raised his head to take a look and said, this girl is becoming more and more slippery. The snow is about to arrive, so we can't allow her to take advantage of the snow to escape. If she really escapes, then all the preparations we've made would have been in vain. The black-robed elder nodded. I understand. Nothing must go wrong. The old man agreed, but in his heart he was thinking, young master never cared about the possibility of his prey escaping. But this time he made an exception for this woman. From this, it could be seen that young master cared about this woman to the point of worrying about personal gains and losses. Then the target this time really couldn't be lost. Everyone come closer. Close all the gaps in the encirclement. The heavy snow finally began to fall from the sky. Humph, my wife bought so many grapes and ate them one by one in front of me, knowing that my stomach doesn't taste good. She knows I'll have diarrhea if I eat grapes. Is she trying to frame me? Chapter 307. In just a short quarter of an hour, the ground was already covered in a silvery white color. After another hour, even the surrounding mountain ridges were covered in a vast expanse of white. That girl is really quite scheming. She made use of the weather to seek a turning point. The black-robed old man smiled in admiration. She actually hid somewhere. Both of them changed into white clothes. The young man smiled amusedly and said, "At this moment, when the snow has just covered the land and the surrounding environment has changed, she immediately reacted and thought of changing into white clothes, using the snow as a cover, hoping to escape by a fluke. Looks like this girl's willpower is really amazing. I'm afraid she can still hold on for more than a month." The black-robed old man smiled. "This is good news. The longer she can hold on, the greater the reward for young master." The young man narrowed his eyes and smiled. "Naturally, the longer she can hold on, the better. If she can hold on for another year from now, I think the chaotic purine she will be able to obtain would be enough for her to look down on the current generation and become the most respected in the universe." The black-robed old man laughed loudly, obviously agreeing with the young man's words. The young man's laughter suddenly stopped. He suddenly raised his head and looked into the distance. He frowned and said, "Why is there such a strong wind all of a sudden?" Everyone around the young man also raised their heads to look, trying to figure out what was going on. The howling of the wind in the air was getting louder and louder. The falling snowflakes were also getting fiercer and fiercer. When the wind blew on their faces, it actually felt like they were being cut by a small knife. The accumulated snow on the ground in front of them also gradually flew up with the wind. After a while, the flying snow covered everyone's vision. The snowfall actually became unprecedentedly strong. "Not good." The young man furrowed his brows. "In this kind of weather, wearing white clothes is really advantageous. Don't let those two girls take the opportunity to escape. Hurry." Unexpectedly, before the young man could finish his words, the wind in the air actually increased again, becoming even stronger. Following a sudden sound, it was as if there were thousands of people roaring at the same time. The surroundings were actually like the roar of a tsunami. All the trees in the entire forest also bent down in unison. Immediately after, the snow that covered the mountains and plains suddenly flew up at the same time. This time, it wasn't as simple as blocking one's vision. No matter how good one's eyesight was, one wouldn't be able to see their own fingers in front of them. "Oh no!" The young man roared in anger. His body flickered as he flew against the wind. His entire body was like a sharp blade, slicing apart the biting cold northern wind. A moment ago, Yun-yang, who had rushed over from afar, looked down at the forest from the sky. He saw Ji Lingxi, who was carrying Yu Rulan on her back, running for her life in a flustered manner, and his eyes widened in anger. The blood stains on the two girls, their pale faces, and the way they struggled to survive were like a knife stabbing into Yun-yang's heart. Just as Yun-yang was about to make his move, he unexpectedly sensed a strong aura emanating from the forest. Although Yun-yang was furious, he tried his best to control himself. "The more it's like this, the more I can't lose my temper. The opponent's ability isn't clear now. Nothing can be done with a moment of impulse. It's fine if I just lose my life, but 8th sister-in-law and Lingxi's lives are also in my hands now." Although the thousand-soul monkey was intelligent, it was still a cub after all. Its deific consciousness had yet to be awakened. Although it could warn and guide the way, it could not tell Yun-yang everything that had happened. In Yun-yang's opinion, although Ji Lingxi and Yu Rulan were in danger, their opponent might not be too strong. After all, when he had parted ways with Ji Lingxi, her cultivation base was only at the 5th peak. Now that not much time had passed, even if Ji Lingxi had a breakthrough, her improvement would still be limited. If there was still room for maneuver with such a level of ability, then their opponent could not be considered a formidable force. It was because of such calculations that Yun-yang did not have the time to consider what he should do when Ji Lingxi's opponent was so strong that Yun-yang could not handle it. Now, however, Yun-yang was shocked to realize that not only did the opponent's ability far exceed his estimation, it was so high that he could not handle it at all. Yun-yang sucked in a deep breath and quietly turned into the northern wind. "There's more than one cultivator's aura, and any one of them is far above mine. Furthermore, 2 of their auras seem to be on par with Ling Xiaozui's. It's only a sliver away from Ling Xiaozui's aura that I had sensed the other day. Who is this person? How can he be so strong?" After carefully analyzing the opponent's combat power, Yun-yang was stunned by his own judgment. How could there be such a terrifying aura at this time and place? An expert of this level? What was even more inconceivable was that they were hunting Ji Lingxi down. Since there was such a terrifying expert here, how could the two of them not be taken down after such a long time? There was definitely a conspiracy. How many experts in this world could there be who were at the level of the person in front of them? From what Yunyang knew, there were only 4 to 5 people who were at this level. Ling Xiaozue was one, Dugucho, who was a legend, was naturally one. Mr. Nian was the Four Seasons Tower's mastermind, so of course he was one. The last one was Jun Moyan, whose name he only knew. Yunyang really did not know much more than that. He had not even heard of their names before. Now that there were 2 of them, Yunyang could not help thinking, could this be the Four Seasons Tower's Mr. Nian? Who is the other one? If the Four Seasons Tower had 2 such experts at the same time, they could have killed Ling Xiaozue together. With the Four Seasons Tower's manpower, resources, and capability, it would be a piece of cake to set up a trap for Ling Xiaozue. This should be a problem for the Four Seasons Tower or Ling Xiaozue to consider. It has nothing to do with me. However, no matter who the person below is, he is a formidable character that cannot be defeated. To Yunyang, the forest was a place where he could be in extreme danger at any time. However, no matter how dangerous it was, Yunyang would never allow Ji Lingxi and Yu Rulan to be captured right under his nose. Even if it meant risking his life, he would not hesitate. The wind whistled. It seemed that the black-robed elder below and the young man with a handsome face and relaxed demeanor were the culprits. My plan now should be. He pondered for a moment and then he made up his mind. He had been cultivating the manifestation transfiguration during this period of time and had improved greatly. It was time to verify it now. In the next moment, the gale in the sky intensified by more than 10 times. The accumulated snow on the mountain flew into the sky along with the sudden gale. Heaven and earth were shrouded in a blur. At the same time, a tornado formed from the sky to the ground and charged downwards like a raging dragon. The young man on the other side reacted swiftly as well. Just as the change occurred, his silhouette was already flying over like a sharp arrow piercing through the clouds. The young man could tell at a glance that the tornado that was charging downwards like a raging dragon was man-made. He roared, "Who is it? How dare you disrupt this young lord's plan?" In spite of this, the tornado that had appeared out of nowhere ignored his words. With a gust of wind, it wrapped Ji Lingxi and Yu Rulan's delicate bodies and sprung up from the ground, retreating hastily. Yunyang knew that he only had this one chance, judging from the other party's ability. Therefore he did not hesitate to wrap the 2 girls up and retreat at once. Stay. The young man's body that was moving horizontally turned abruptly and soared into the sky against the strong northern wind. A hand abruptly stretched out from his sleeve. It was ink black in color. He grabbed out and roared, "Stay here." With this grab, a black hole suddenly appeared even in the snow that filled the sky. Any spiritual chi of heaven and earth was blocked outside the black hole. Yunyang could feel the other party's lock on him. He had absolutely no power to resist this grab. The attack was swift, about to destroy the tornado and end his life. Yunyang could feel the other party's gaze locked onto him. He had absolutely no power to resist this grab. Yunyang's mind raced as a clap of thunder resounded in the air. How could there be a sudden clap of thunder in the middle of winter when the sky was filled with snow? Not only that, there was even lightning accompanying it. The young man was taken aback for a moment. A bolt of lightning twisted in the sky like a shining silver snake, striking down from the sky and striking the young man's right hand that was as black as ink with unusual precision. A loud boom resounded. The force of the grab vanished into thin air. Smoke rose from his right hand that was struck by the lightning. The young man retracted his right hand at once, but his other hand followed with an even more violent grab. With a light crack, he actually clawed out a black hole in the air. It was obvious that he was enraged after being struck by the lightning. His subsequent attack was fueled by anger and humiliation. However, in that split second where the lightning struck, the tornado had already taken advantage of the gap to rise 1,000 feet into the sky. It was still rising and the distance between them had already increased. No matter how powerful the young man's second attack was, it was all for naught. At this time, a sonorous dragon roar suddenly sounded out, and a ray of light flashed rapidly below. A magnificent sword light and a black-clothed figure surged with sword chi that soared into the sky and instantly soared up to 1,000 feet into the sky. It was the black-robed elder who was wielding his sword to intercept the tornado in the sky. The sword struck with the tempest of thunder. The sword hovered 1,000 feet in the sky like a dragon. "Where do you think you're going?" Yunyang was shocked once again. The tornado that he had turned into sped up once more, trying his best to evade the attack. However, as the sword swept past, the tornado that was like a long dragon was cut in half. Chapter 308. Yun Yang felt a heart-wrenching pain as the purplish-golden liquid that had accumulated in his dantian vanished at once. His soul was shaken as well, and a sense of absent-mindedness rose within him. He had almost escaped from the range of his wind manifestation and plummeted from the sky. The force of the black-robed elder's sword was aimed directly at his soul, destroying it and destroying his soul. Yun Yang was currently a combination of wind, cloud, and thunder. Half of his manifestation was wind, the other half cloud, and a sliver of his deific consciousness as lightning. His deific consciousness and soul were thus divided into 3 parts of different sizes. The tornado was only formed by half of Yun Yang's cultivation base. Otherwise, the sudden slash would have been enough to split Yun Yang into 2, just like how the tornado had split him into 2. Even so, Yun Yang was still severely injured and his soul was severely damaged. After all, the tornado's manifestation had been cut in half by the person's sword. The injury was extremely severe. Yun Yang forcefully activated the endless divine art while Emmy continuously supplied the air of vitality from afar, barely holding on. He mustered all the remaining energy in his body for one last fight. The tornado finally soared into the sky with a boom. The elder's sword force had been exhausted. He could not strike again in time. With a howl, the tornado soared into the sky and sped away. In the sky above, a white cloud leisurely flew over, supporting the soaring tornado. It continued to rise, and in the blink of an eye, it had already reached a height of several hundred feet, pierced through the dark clouds that were currently snowing, and then disappeared without a trace. Silence reigned. The black-robed elder descended slowly from 1,000 feet in the sky, his eyes filled with shock. The young master on the ground also widened his eyes as he looked up at the dark clouds in the sky. His eyes were filled with shock. Who was this person? What kind of cultivation method was this? The 2 of them had tried their best to intercept the tornado, and it was enough to move mountains and fill up the seas. However, it seemed like the tornado was not affected at all. At the very least, from the surface, it seemed that the other party had left in a relaxed manner. What kind of cultivation method is this? Why is it so strange? The young master blurted out. This? The black-robed old man laughed bitterly. I've never seen it before. I've never even heard of it. The young master frowned and said, That's a person? The black-robed old man's face was solemn. He remained silent for a long time. That tornado was man-made, and the person who did it was a part of the wind and clouds. There was no doubt about that. But what kind of person could completely transform into the wind manifestation? Not even a trace of flesh. Although his attack just now had only cut off half of the tornado, with the methods that the other party had displayed, the entire tornado should have been formed from his body, and cutting off half of it should have cut off part of his body. Why was it that only profound energy leaked out and did not really injure his body? This kind of cultivation technique was shocking and terrifying. At the same time, it was a little too strange. With the old man's rich experience, among all the wondrous techniques that he knew of, there were definitely quite a few that could transform one's body into wind and lightning in a short period of time. However, the so-called wind and thunder transformation was just a saying. Because no matter how dazzling the person who performed the technique was, no matter how much he looked like wind and lightning, his body still existed. If the other party aimed at his real body and cut it off, then the so-called wind and thunder transformation would just be a joke. But what happened just now was clear. Someone had descended from the sky in the form of the wind. He had never revealed his true body. He had directly swept up the 2 women in the form of a tornado, and then directly soared into the sky. Even when he was dismembered by the sword, only a portion of his profound energy dissipated. Not only was his real body not damaged, he didn't even reveal himself. How could that not make the young master and the old man feel inexplicably shocked and horrified? I didn't expect these 2 girls to have such strong reinforcements. The young master took a deep breath and said, No wonder they kept persevering and waiting for help. They never gave up. So that's why. He frowned and said, Since there's such a person in the way then, all our previous arrangements are going to be for naught? Even if we find him in the future, how can we fight against such a legendary expert? Other than the disappointment in his tone, there was also a sense of fear that came from the bottom of his heart. Despite the strong reluctance in his heart, he had already accepted his fate and did not want to complicate things further. Such a method was almost incomprehensible. Was it not courting death to go against such a person? Young master, I'm afraid there's something fishy about this. There might be a turning point. The black-robed old man thought about it and said, From what I see, our arrangements might not be ineffective. The young master's face was dark as he said, "Oh? What do you mean?" Although this old servant was shocked by the manifestation that person displayed just now, I secretly think that, if this person really has the cultivation base that young master thinks he has, then, to put it bluntly, since this person is friends with Ji Lingxi and Yu Rulan, how can he let the two ladies be bullied by young master like that? The black-robed old man said. That does make sense. The young master said worriedly, what if this person comes to seek revenge? What should we do? With such an elusive peerless expert, our family? Young master, you've misunderstood me. That's not what this old servant meant. The black-robed old man said with a hunched back, this old servant meant that, if he really had such capability just now, he should have killed all of us. Based on the methods we've seen and the incomprehensible meteorological manifestation cultivation method, it has long surpassed the level of this continent. It shouldn't be difficult for him to kill us. Even if his goal was to save the two ladies, it wouldn't be difficult for him to kill us after that. But he didn't do so. The black-robed old man said, not only did he not, he didn't show himself from the beginning until the end. This is too unusual for such a superb expert. Did he only want to save them? Did he not consider avenging the two ladies at all? This is what this old servant said was unreasonable and strange. Since that person could come all the way here to save them, I believe their relationship must be unusual. Since it's unusual, then as long as he really has super strength, it's only right for us to kill him and take his life. But he didn't do that. And it's not that he didn't want to, but he couldn't. He couldn't. Besides that, there's another strange thing. The fight just now was only for a moment, and their understanding of each other was quite limited. But from the beginning to the end, the other party gave this old servant a feeling that he was in a hurry, as if he came in a hurry and left in a sorry state. It was this kind of feeling. It was definitely not the feeling of looking down on us, acting casually or disdainfully. The young master listened to the black-robed old man's analysis seriously. Then he interrupted the old man's words and kept making him repeat. The more he listened, the brighter his eyes became, and the fear hidden in his eyes became fainter. And that tornado, although it looked terrifying to us, it didn't have any real destructive power. At least, its power was very different from what we expected. It was insignificant. If the other party was really a peerless expert and had such a wonderful cultivation method, he could have used the tornado to kill all of us. It wouldn't be difficult. At least, if we were in his shoes, we definitely wouldn't let go of someone who bullied and humiliated our family to such a degree. So, this old servant's judgment on this matter is, although the cultivation method used by the other party is strange and mysterious, it's either because the other party's cultivation base is too shallow or it's not enough. In short, it's only for bluffing. If it's really used to kill the enemy, it's just SOSO, so the other party's purpose should be to save people. Judging from the fact that he came in a hurry and fled in a sorry state after saving people, it's possible that the other party doesn't have no evil intentions towards us. It's just that he doesn't have the strength to do so. The black-robed old man said, to the Tianshan continent, our family hasn't stepped foot in the mortal world for a very long time. We don't know what specific changes have happened in this continent, but if this old servant's guess is true and such a cultivation method really exists, then the other party is definitely not a nobody in this continent. So, we just need to ask around a little and we'll probably get some news. As long as we have news, we can decide on our next move. The young master nodded as he listened. His face regained a smile and he said, yes, that's right. Even if we confirm that the other party is really an expert that we can't fight against during the process of asking around, or that there are other elders behind the other party who are really super experts, we still have room to maneuver. If it really doesn't work, we can return to our family anytime. As long as we seal the spiritual energy passage, we can still sit back and relax no matter how powerful the other party is. But if, a hint of ruthlessness flashed in the young master's eyes. But if the other party isn't that kind of peerless expert and doesn't have a top expert to back him up? The black-robed old man smiled and said, then, this old servant has to congratulate you, young master. Not only can you regain the chaos originaline, but you can also obtain a superb cultivation method that's unparalleled in the bound of universe. Exactly. Ah. The snow continued to fall. Between heaven and earth, even the mountains seemed to have lost their ups and downs, leaving only a vast expanse of whiteness. In a small town not far from that forest, the black-robed old man and the young master were sitting in a tavern, listening attentively to the chatter. The snow had sealed off the mountain and the roads were blocked. Other than the martial world experts who were skilled and bold, ordinary people could only look for inns and taverns nearby to stay away from the snow. As a result, all the inns and restaurants within the area covered by the heavy snow were packed to the brim. With the current situation, it was extremely easy to obtain information. The 9 Supremes Lords actually have such power? Isn't this the power of a deity? The black-robed old man looked curiously at the drunken fatty who was rambling on. Chapter 309. The fat man snorted and said proudly while wagging his tail, "The 9 Supremes Lords are, of course, immortal-like figures. They are also the guardians of the Empire of Yutong. As long as the 9 Supremes Lords are here, Yutong is invincible." His tone was arrogant, as if he was the 9 Supremes Lords himself. However, the 9 Supremes Lords are all ready. The young lord sighed and said, 8 heroes have fallen in the battle at Tianshan Cliff. Only one is left. It's hard for him to do it alone. How do you know of Lord Supreme Wind's prowess? The fat man looked at the young lord in disdain and said, Lord Supreme Wind's ability is omnipotent. I've seen it with my own eyes. Right above Tiantang City, a tornado that could communicate with heaven and earth. That power was earth-shattering. Many of them knelt down on the spot, almost as if they had seen a deity. Or perhaps, Lord Supreme Wind has already become an immortal. Lord Supreme Wind, tornado? The young lord murmured. Snow was falling outside, but the people inside had nothing to do. Now that they heard someone talking about the 9 Supremes, they were all Yutong's people. Naturally, they were familiar with Yutong's heroes. They came forward and started a heated discussion, one after another. In the crowd, the black-robed elder and the young lord exclaimed in admiration as they listened, glancing at each other from time to time. By now they had completely understood what was going on. So this was it. Tianshan Continent had actually undergone such a change during the time they were not in Tianshan Continent. The residence of 9 Supremes. The 9 Heavens dictum. The 9 Supremes. It seemed that the person who had saved Ji Lingxi and Yu Rulan was Supreme Wind. There was no doubt about this, no doubt about it. The 9 Supremes having such a phenomenal power is obviously bestowed by the 9 Heavens domain. As for the 9 Supremes, they were still annihilated despite having such an ability. It's obvious that the 9 Supremes' true combat power is nothing to be afraid of. Young lord, this is a rare opportunity. There was a tinge of excitement on the black-robed elder's sinister face. That's right. We can't miss this heaven-sent opportunity. The young master said slowly, his eyes flashing with light. Currently, we are the only clan that has opened this spiritual energy passage. This time it was originally only for the young master's cultivation, to search for the innate profound Yin and collect the chaos vital Yin. The other clans did not know that such a thing existed in the profound sky continent, and because of this, they missed the opportunity to obtain such a mysterious technique. The black-robed old man said, but this matter might not be able to be completed in a short period of time. Especially since Supreme Wind is so mysterious, it's hard for anyone to know his true identity. Now that he's been ambushed, I'm afraid he's even more cautious about concealing his tracks. Our investigation will be fraught with difficulties. If the young master doesn't return after a long time and doesn't show himself for a long time, the other clans will inevitably have suspicions. As long as any clan finds out about this cultivation technique, they will definitely not let it go. At that time, the black-robed old man lowered his voice, his words mixed with a strong hint. What do you mean? The young master smiled playfully. This old servant means? The black-robed old man gritted his teeth. Let the others return first. Leave only a few to follow the young master, then seal the spiritual chi passage and create the illusion that the young master has returned. Young master has the heart-soul jade. When the time comes, you only need to activate the heart-soul jade to inform the clan with your utmost vital energy and open the spiritual chi passage temporarily. Then you can return safely. With such a great effort, I believe the other clans will no longer pay attention to this. When the young master returns, it will be even more secretive. I believe that after a period of cultivation, you can directly claim the top of the Rising Dragon role. That's right. Speaking of this, the young master's breathing could not help but quicken. He said, with our cultivation base, we should be at the pinnacle of this world in the secular world of the Tianshan continent. As long as we don't provoke the pinnacle experts of this world, the rest of us are mediocre and not worth mentioning. Even if we take 10,000 steps back, if we really want to escape, no one will be able to stop us with our soaring soul escape technique. This plan works. If the young master has made up his mind, this old servant will arrange it right away. It's better to do it as soon as possible. Very well. The young master said decisively, since there's no need to leave a lot of people behind, let's just leave you and me behind. Let the others return and stir up the commotion over there so that we won't be exposed. Tomorrow morning we'll go to Tiantang City. Yes? To the young master and the black-robed old man, the mishap had happened right in front of their eyes. They had to adapt to the situation. They were first shocked and then delighted, as if the crisis had turned into a huge opportunity. It was a huge surprise. To Yun Yang, however, it was a series of thrills. From the beginning to the end he was terrified and terrified. If his mental fortitude had been slightly weaker, he would have been scared to death even if he had not been beaten to death. There was no other reason than that the other party's ability was a little too high, exceeding the upper limit of Yun Yang's mental endurance. The rescue this time, the level he had to endure, as well as the degree of damage he sustained, had even exceeded the time when Hanqing had been severely injured. Yun Yang was in grave danger the moment he made his move. The few whiteys were enraged and were about to charge out. Yun Yang quickly stopped them. With the other party's unfathomable level and terrifying cultivation, even if the whiteys had transcended and advanced in rank, it would still be useless. Not only would it be a futile effort, it would only expose them further, and they might even be completely annihilated here. However, at this moment he suddenly had an idea. Just like what the young master and the black-robed old man had thought, a crisis could also be an opportunity. The strong enemy before them might be a huge surprise. However, whatever idea it was, it needed to be perfected further. There were too many details to think about. It was better to bring the two girls and the 1,000 illusion monkey back to the residence of Yun as soon as possible. After all, Yun Yang was not in a good state at the moment. Not only had he expended a lot of mystical qi, his cultivation method was flawed due to the black-robed old man's brutal slash. He had to recuperate as soon as possible. Ji Lingxi and Yu Rulan, on the other hand, felt an inexplicable sense of peace the moment they were swept up by the tornado. As soon as they relaxed, they fainted. When the two girls woke up and regained consciousness, they realized that they were already lying on a soft, fragrant bed. Where is this? Ji Lingxi scrambled to her feet, her eyes widening in shock. What she saw was very familiar. There was a sword hanging on the wall to the left of the bed, a sword that was purely for decoration, while there was a painting on the other wall opposite the sword. It was a splash ink landscape painting. There was only one place in Ji Lingxi's memory that was so familiar. What's wrong? Yu Rulan asked when she saw that Ji Lingxi was in a daze. She then noticed the abnormality in her body as well. Her injured leg was no longer in pain. Although it still felt awkward and strained to move, the injury on her broken leg was no longer a hindrance. Yu Rulan tried to move it gently and was even more shocked. What's going on? My leg, has it really recovered? Ji Lingxi was startled by Yu Rulan's words. Shock was written all over her face as she said, This is my room. Yu Rulan was shocked as well. What? You're saying that we're in your main residence's bedroom? Ji Lingxi answered, No, this isn't my main residence. This is my. As she spoke, she blushed and said, This was my private room when I stayed in the residence of Yun. Yu Rulan did not have the time to laugh at her. She was even more shocked. Residence of Yun? You're saying that this is the residence of Yun? Yun Yang's residence of Yun? Absolutely. Ji Lingxi stood up, feeling invigorated. She opened the window and took a deep breath, saying, I don't even need to open my eyes to confirm it. I only need to close my eyes and take a deep breath to confirm that this is the residence of Yun. The air here is exceptionally fresh. Yu Rulan was exasperated. This girl was truly hopeless. The air was the same everywhere, especially in a big city like this where the air was the dirtiest. How could it be exceptionally fresh? We've just left the forest, shouldn't it be fresher there? It was obvious that this girl loved the house and its crow, but this was a little too much. She loved the house and its crow too much. Otherwise, how could she have spouted such nonsense and claimed that the air was exceptionally fresh? Lingxi, you're right. How can the air be fresh? It does seem like the air is pretty good, but it's probably because it has just snowed, so the air is a little better. This is to be expected, not necessarily because the residence of Yun's environment is superior. Yu Rulan could feel the freshness of the surrounding air as well, but she did not think too much about it. Ji Lingxi looked out from the window and saw that the entire residence of Yun's courtyard was covered in snow. There were no traces of people walking on the snow. The pavilion at the side of the courtyard looked the same as she remembered, but the top of the pavilion was covered in snow. How could there be green leaves and branches underneath? Even if the snow was sudden and the trees had yet to wither, What was that flower over there? It was obviously a flower that had grown out of the snow tenaciously, blooming with an intoxicating fragrance. It's beautiful. Ji Lingxi sucked in a breath and said, Sister Lan, facts speak louder than words. What you see here has already proven that I'm not lying. I said that this is the most beautiful place in the world. Yu Rulan lay on her side on the bed, holding her head with her right hand as she smiled helplessly. Yes. Wherever Yunyang is, it's the most beautiful place in the world. I don't doubt this at all. Ji Lingxi was both embarrassed and furious. Sister Yu, you know that's not what I meant. You're mocking me on purpose. Chapter 310. It could be seen that Ji Lingxi had completely recovered. Whether it was her mental or physical strength, they had all recovered to a perfect state. The fear that had accumulated in the process of being hunted and escaping had vanished without a trace when she found out where she was. Perhaps, to Ji Lingxi, as long as she was here, everything else was no longer a problem. Peace, comfort, stability, and safety. This girl, you're really heartless. Yu Rulan felt a weight lifted from her heart as she smiled. After going through so much, all of you are finally reunited. Where's your young master Yun? Yu Rulan asked. He's put in a lot of effort to save us this time. We have to thank him properly. Ji Lingxi nodded, blushing as she said, Of course. Yu Rulan teased, Of course? It's easy for you to say. How can I thank him for such a huge favor? I've been thinking for a long time, but I still can't think of a way to thank him. Why don't you just give yourself to him? Tell young Master Yun directly that there are no words to express my gratitude. I can only give myself to him. Before she could finish, Ji Lingxi covered her mouth in embarrassment and anger. Sister Lan, stop talking. Yu Rulan begged for mercy. The two girls were in a mess. Knock knock. Someone knocked on the door. May I come in? Ji Lingxi got up to open the door. Wait. Yu Rulan said anxiously, Cover me? Oh, Ji Lingxi replied. Aren't you wearing clothes? Yu Rulan was speechless. At the door, a youth dressed in purple stood with his arms behind his back, looking at the white snow in the courtyard. Looking from the back, the youth was tall, standing against the wind. His hair was as black as ink, his purple robes fluttering in the wind. He stood proudly in the snow-covered land, outstanding and otherworldly. Ji Lingxi could only feel her heart thumping twice. Her mouth felt parched and she did not know what to say. Yun? Ji Lingxi coughed and said, Yunyang, was it you who saved us? Yunyang turned around and said with a smile, It's nothing. Are you all right? Ji Lingxi suddenly felt that something was amiss. How could this piece of wood speak in such a heartwarming tone? Was this still Yunyang? Where is the Yunyang who used to tease me? Why was he not used to such a conversation? After a pause he said, I'm fine, but Sister Lan's leg is a little troublesome. Yunyang glanced at her and said, Don't worry, I've done the initial treatment on Sister Lan's leg. There won't be any sequelae left. She'll be healed in 3 days at most. Here all troubles are no trouble to me. These words were so domineering. However, it made people feel safe after listening to it. But Ji Lingxi felt that Yunyang's gaze was strange. Whether it was when he looked at her or when he stole glances at Sister Lan, his gaze was always odd. It was just like, no matter how hard Ji Lingxi racked her brains, she could not figure out the true meaning behind Yunyang's odd gaze. However, Yu Rulan could acutely sense the strange intent in Yunyang's gaze. Yunyang's gaze was neither covetous nor spying. It was concern and concern. It was just that the concern he had for Ji Lingxi and Yu Rulan was different. Yunyang's gaze towards Ji Lingxi was like a brother looking at his mischievous younger sister whom he had failed to take good care of. His gaze was filled with remorse and indulgence. It was even like a father looking at his youngest daughter whom he had abandoned at a young age and who had returned after 18 years. His gaze was filled with remorse and love. Yes, it was love. Yu Rulan could see this love, but Ji Lingxi could not understand it. Ji Lingxi was born into an adopted family, not a biological one. Naturally, the familial atmosphere between them was not like that of an ordinary family. The affection between family members was foreign to Ji Lingxi, causing her to be confused. In spite of this, Yu Rulan, who understood the feeling, was even more baffled. You think that Lingxi was injured and bullied because you didn't take good care of her. Although the cause and effect is a little far-fetched, it can be used to explain the doting and remorseful look in your eyes. After all, we all know about Lingxi's affection for you. But, what the hell is this kindness? Also, what do you mean by having similar remorse towards me? It's true that Lingxi is related to you, but this is the first time I've met you. Even if you love me, it's barely understandable that you have similar feelings towards me out of pity and remorse for what happened to Lingxi, but so what if you have more respect for me as an elder? Do I look so old that I'm old enough to be your elder? Just as Yu Rulan was pondering, Yun Yang had already walked into the room. Yu Rulan was doubtful, but she forced herself to sit up on the bed. Her eyes were trained on Yun Yang as she said with a smile, "Thank you, young Master Yun, for saving me this time." Yun Yang's gaze grew more complicated as he replied respectfully, "You flatter me. This is what I should do." Yun Yang paused and said, "I found a few servants. I heard that they serve you well. I've also bought 4 servant girls. They'll be here in a while. Let them take care of you then. Just tell them if you need anything. Don't stand on ceremony, the residence of Yun is your home." Yu Rulan said, "You don't have to be so." Before she could finish her words, Yun Yang continued, "The residence of Yun is your home from now on. Stay here with me. No matter what, it's a little safer here. Besides, we're not strangers. Sister Lan and Lingxi don't have to worry." The 2 ladies were stunned by Yun Yang's words. Although Yun Yang knew of Yu Rulan's existence, both of them had never officially met before. This was only their first meeting and conversation. "Why does it sound so familiar when you're so direct and decisive? We don't seem to be that close, do we? You're acting like the head of a family. What do you mean by everything can be decided with a single word? Besides, how do you know my full name?" Ji Lingxi asked in shock. She was very sure. She had told Yun Yang that she was called Ji Ling. She had never mentioned that there was actually a word behind it. Now, however, Yun Yang had called it out in such a familiar and logical manner. He had even called her Lingxi so intimately. What was going on? Yun Yang rubbed his nose and said, "I heard your conversation just now, that's how I know." The 2 girls looked at each other suspiciously. Even so, there was no reason for him to be so familiar with it. At least the atmosphere was still very strange. However, the 2 girls were intelligent. Despite feeling that something was amiss, they suppressed all their doubts in unison. Yun Yang was obviously unwilling to tell the truth, so they would let him keep the secret. They believed that they would find out when the time came. There was no need to be impatient. As long as they could confirm that Yun Yang had no ill intentions towards them, it would be enough. However, this young Master Yun had a lot of secrets. For example, what was the matter with the tornado that swept the 2 of them away? What kind of miraculous elixir was that broken leg? These were things that could not be explained at the moment. In spite of this, the 2 girls did not ask about it. "Tell me what happened." "I intervened directly when the situation was bad, but this isn't over yet. I'm afraid there's a follow-up. I understand the cause and I believe it'll be helpful in the future." Yin Yang asked. This question immediately evoked the strong anger and grievance in the hearts of the 2 women. Ji Lingxi's eyes were spitting fire. "I don't know where this lunatic came from. His actions are all insane, and his manpower and financial resources are even more insane." After that, he recounted everything that had happened earlier, and his words were filled with extreme rage. Yu Rulan, who was standing on the side, did not even have the chance to interject. Everything was spilled out by Ji Lingxi alone. Yu Rulan wanted to stop her from talking about the 2 noble families, not wanting to expose the family's scandals, but Ji Lingxi could not care less. She spilled everything without a care. Yun Yang could only feel the rage within him skyrocket. The Ji family. The Yu family. How dare they bully 8th brother's younger sister and fiancé? This was an unforgivable sin. Actually, in terms of the profound Sky Continent's era's background, although the 2 families' way of doing things was unreasonable to the 2 girls, it was the trend of the times and there was nothing wrong with it. Not to mention the fact that the green-clothed young master had done all the necessary formalities and was very sincere in his marriage. The betrothal gifts that the 2 families could not resist were even more generous. Furthermore, the young lord in green was incredibly powerful and he had guards and attendants of similar capabilities. The 2 families were not as powerful as him, so how could they dare object? Not to mention that he had given so many resources and benefits. Even if he did not spare a single cent and forcefully married the 2 girls, the 2 families would still compromise in the end, even if they were hesitant. The existence of the children of noble families had always been related to the marriage of benefits. It was not just the 2 girls, or rather, it was not just the 2 girls. The 2 girls could only be considered as tragic characters in the era of bad luck. In spite of this, the trend of the times, the background, and the inertia of history did not apply to Yun Yang at all. In Yun Yang's eyes, he was certain that this was a great humiliation, a humiliation that must be pursued to the end. This was probably the difference between his own people and others. To Yun Yang, if 8th brother were still around, he would only be assisting from the side, He would do his part to help out as much as he could. However, now that eighth brother was gone, someone had bullied his younger sister and fiancée. Then this matter would be his own. Everything else would be shouldered by him, Yun Yang. Chapter 311. Yun Yang's gaze was deep as he listened to Ji Lingxi patiently. He did not show any abnormal reaction throughout the entire process, suppressing everything in his heart. Yu Rulan was far more sensitive than Ji Lingxi. She clearly saw two cold glints flashing across Yun Yang's eyes, filled with murderous intent. At that moment, Yu Rulan felt a chill run through her as she shuddered involuntarily. Yu Rulan, who was born in a prestigious family, knew that it was a murderous intent that was deep and reserved to the extreme. It was obvious. Yun Yang did not say anything on the surface, but the shock he felt from this incident was definitely not as nonchalant as he appeared to be. He had obviously made the most extreme decision that left no room for negotiation. I was still thinking of, forget it. From now on, the two of you will only be Ji Lingxi and Yu Rulan. The Yun family is your home. Yun Yang smiled and said, I'd like to see who it is that actually dares to. He chuckled, almost unable to suppress the surge of murderous intent in him. Ji Lingxi felt warmth in her heart, instinctively feeling that her lover was angry because she had been kidnapped, forced to marry, hunted, and bullied. She smiled brightly and said, then it's settled. We'll stay here from now on and live in seclusion. They won't be able to find us anymore. Yun Yang patted Ji Lingxi's head with a smile and said, Lingxi, you must listen to Sister Lan in the future. Don't be mischievous. I'll go out to buy some medicinal herbs first. I need to nourish your bodies. You've suffered quite a loss after all this running around. As he spoke, he stood up, smiled gently and elegantly and walked out. Ji Lingxi was completely dumbfounded. Yu Rulan's eyes were glued to the spot on Ji Lingxi's head where Yun Yang had patted. She was equally dumbfounded and speechless. The two girls did not even notice when Yun Yang had left. What was going on? Ji Lingxi touched her head, her big, pretty eyes filled with bewilderment once more. A moment later, the four eyes of the two girls met, seeing the disbelief in each other's eyes. What was going on? What was going on? Patting his head, he told himself, good boy, you have to listen to Sister Lan from now on. This tone? Am I a 3-year-old? Puchi, Yu Rulan finally snapped out of her trance and burst out laughing. Ha! The Ji Lingxi rubbed her head, exasperated. She cursed under her breath. This blockhead, he's not thinking straight again. Does he know what he's saying? Did he lose his mind? That must be it. Ha! Yu Rulan had not laughed so heartily for a long time. She slapped the bed with one hand. Lingxi, is this really your sweetheart? Ah! Are you sure he's your sweetheart? Aren't they your elders? I don't know if he's my elder, but I'm sure he sees you as one. Congratulations, Sister Lan, for becoming that blockhead's elder. Ji Lingxi's face contorted as she stared at Ji Lingxi speechlessly. Yu Rulan was taken aback when she heard that, then she was stunned. Yun Yang's actions just now had been to pamper Ji Lingxi like a child, but to her, he was really respectful like he was to an elder. Am I really that old? I'm only slightly older than Lingxi, all right? Yu Rulan was no longer as joyful as she was before. Worries flooded her heart. Appearance, age, youth, any one of these, no matter when or where, would be the mortal enemy of women. That afternoon, Yun Yang found the medicinal herbs he needed and began to make his move. He decocted the medicine. Then he found some green things from who knew where. They were filled with life and spiritual energy, as well as a sweet fragrance. When one smelled it, they felt relaxed and happy. Wipe your face with this before you drink the medicine. Not only can it refresh your mind, said Yun Yang, it can also beautify your face. He then proceeded to decoct the medicine. Beautify it. Even Yu Rulan, who had given up hope of finding Ji Lingfeng, could not resist the temptation. What more Ji Lingxi, who had put on makeup for the man she liked. Why would this miss need this thing? Ji Lingxi pouted. This idiot hasn't seen my real face yet. I'll wash my face later and remove my disguise. Let's see if I can charm him to death. Yu Rulan chuckled. Since you don't care for it, give it all to me. Sister Lan is old and frail now. I'm being treated like an elder, I need this to add to my beauty. Ji Lingxi quivered and quickly came over to divide the green stuff equally, afraid that Yu Rulan would take all of it. Yu Rulan pursed her lips and teased, if young Master Yun were to see you like this, he might pat your head again and say, girl, grow up quickly. Don't make me worry too much. Ji Lingxi was enraged. If he dares to do this again, I've done it a few times but I didn't say anything. She was worried, thinking, This blockhead has been so insensitive all this while. He doesn't understand a woman's thoughts at all. If he really says it out loud, it'll be so embarrassing. She washed her face with clean water and removed her disguise. She then smeared the green liquid on her and Yurulan's faces bit by bit, enduring the wrinkled feeling with her eyes closed for half a quarter of an hour. Yunyang had said that the medicine had to be applied on the face for at least half a quarter of an hour before it would take effect. It was best to close one's eyes during the process and nurse the eyelids as well. Both girls were very obedient. Ji Lingxi and Yu Rulan trusted Yunyang from the bottom of their hearts. Therefore, they carried out his instructions without the slightest hesitation. Half a quarter of an hour later, Ji Lingxi opened her eyes to see Yu Rulan looking at her, not knowing whether to laugh or to cry. "Sister Lan, why are you looking at me like this?" "Your face," Ji Lingxi suddenly exclaimed. This was because Yu Rulan's face that was displayed before him was a withered yellow. It was the exact color of her face. It was even to the extent that her eyes, which were originally clear like water, became obscure and dull. Her hands, neck, ears. Anyways, all the colors of her clothes that she could see had turned into this color. Her beauty that was supposed to be peerless was now only average and below average. Only the outline of her face remained the same. However, no one would believe that the person in front of them was the peerless Yu Rulan. She was like a completely different person. While Ji Lingxi was shocked by the change in Yu Rulan's appearance, a sudden thought struck her. With a loud cry, she sprinted to the mirror and looked at it with the slightest hope. The next moment, Ji Lingxi felt her limbs go cold. The color of her face was the same hue as Yu Rulan's. It was as if she was born this way, there was no sign of modification. In a moment of desperation, Ji Lingxi rubbed her face forcefully and washed it with water, but it was futile. The withered color lingered on her pretty face as if she was born with it. Ji Lingxi felt waves of emotions rolling in her heart, her entire being slackened. How was she supposed to charm Yunyang when she looked like this? How was she supposed to talk about her true face? "Yunyang, I'm going to kill you." Ji Lingxi bared her fangs and claws, wanting to cry. "This bastard, what medicine did he give me to disfigure me?" She recalled being forced into marriage, being hunted down and having her face targeted along the way, but she had struggled and fought with all her might, time and time again. She had narrowly escaped death, narrowly escaping death. Now she had thought that all her sufferings were over. She and sister Yu were safe. It was at this moment of relief that her most cherished face had been destroyed by Yunyang. Perhaps this was not considered a disfigurement and there was still room for redemption, but judging by the stubbornness of the color on her face, it would not be gone in a short period of time. To Ji Lingxi this was like a bolt from the blue. Yunyang walked in with the medicine, his expression still filled with adoration as he said gently, "Young lady, why are you making such a fuss? Lingxi, you have to change this habit from now on. Otherwise, how are you going to find a husband in the future?" Ji Lingxi was stunned. Yu Rulan was stunned as well. "Why are you speaking in such a fatherly tone? What's going on? Was it really all right?" Yunyang placed the medicine on the table and explained with a smile, "The ointment on your faces is a spiritual medicine that I've gone through a lot of trouble to find. Although your peerless looks have been concealed, it's the same as covering your original looks completely. Besides, the duration of this spiritual medicine is not long. It can only last for 3 years at most." 3 years? Only? How many years would a daughter's face be at its brightest in her life? You've erased 3 years of it in one go? Both girls' faces fell as they stared at a certain someone with a hopeless gaze, wishing they could pounce on him and tear him apart. What's with that expression? Let me tell you, this ointment is the legendary 9 Deaths Beauty Balm. Yunyang smiled and said, "Rumor has it that there was a man who, in order to fulfill his wife's wish to preserve her beauty, traveled the world in search of spiritual medicine, constantly adjusting the formula. For this spiritual medicine, he went through 9 life and death situations before he finally managed to concoct the medicinal ointment and brought it back." Yunyang sighed and said, "But the world is unpredictable. He spent too much time searching for the spiritual medicine and adjusting the formula. When he came back, his wife who had been waiting at home for a long time had long lost her beauty. Her temples were covered in white, and she had become an old woman with wrinkled skin and white hair. No matter how magical the balm was, it couldn't bring back her beauty." He sighed helplessly. Chapter 312. Yunyang sighed and said, "However, the world is unpredictable. He spent too much time searching for the spiritual medicine and adjusting the formula. When he came back, his wife, who had been waiting at home for a long time, had long lost her beauty. Her temples were white and she had become an old woman with wrinkled skin and white hair. No matter how magical the beauty bomb was, it couldn't bring back her beauty. He could only sigh helplessly. The man was stunned and deeply regretted wasting his time. In a fit of anger, he threw away all the ointment he had painstakingly developed and accompanied his wife until they grew old. He would never talk about medicine again. Before his wife died, she grabbed his hand and said, "Back then, I thought it was my own wishful thinking that staying young and youthful was the greatest happiness of a woman's life. But now, I know that to be able to be with the person I love for a lifetime is the greatest happiness of a woman. I've long obtained the greatest happiness of a woman's life, and that is your company. The regret of not aging isn't a true regret. Compared to these, it doesn't matter anymore." After saying this, his wife died. This physician finally understood that even with the beauty bomb, even if he never aged, even if he stayed young in the eyes of his wife, it was not as good as the constant company of husband and wife, growing old together and being of one heart. After that, he actually began to study the beauty bomb again. He said that he and his wife had missed half of their time together for this beauty bomb, so he was willing to give it up. However, since the beauty bomb had been created, it would be a waste to abandon it. If the future generations could use it, not only would they be able to rely on each other, they would also be able to stay young and have their dreams come true. A woman could have both of these blessings. Since this beauty bomb was obtained after going through 9 life and death situations, he officially named this spiritual medicine as the 9 Deaths Beauty Bomb. Yun Yang said softly, "The 9 Deaths Beauty Bomb was originally perfect, but this apothecary added yellow vines to the bomb to commemorate his wife. No matter who it was, no matter how much you love to look beautiful, as long as you apply the beauty bomb, your face will wither like an old woman within the first 3 years of applying the bomb. Only after 3 years can you regain your original beauty. During these 3 years, not only will the skin of the user be whiter, but the skin of the user will also be more tender, and their appearance will be more beautiful. Moreover, from then on they will be young forever and their beauty will always be there. I gave you the 9 Deaths Age-Retaining Ointment." Yun Yang said, "I should have asked for your permission before using this ointment, but the people who are hunting you are now searching the vicinity of Tiantang City. I believe that with their capabilities, they'll be able to find out that Lingxi used to stay here with me and that we've been in contact before, so when that time comes he will definitely come looking for us. With the concealment of this ointment, that person will not be able to recognize you. Firstly, it was to cover up. Secondly, it's also a small gift from me to Sister Lan and Lingxi. Yes, it's a gift for our first meeting. Gift Weibo, it's just a token of my respect." Ji Lingxi and Yu Rulan looked at each other. Was this the truth? Hearing this poignant and beautiful story, the 2 women were deeply moved and did not speak for a long time. His heart was heavy. This story was poignant and beautiful. Moreover, it had a lingering charm. Because of his wife's words, this apothecary traveled all over the world in search of spirit herbs for his wife's wish. How deep was this love? It was only after her husband left that the wife realized that what she needed the most was not an everlasting beauty. Instead, it was a friendship that would last forever. When her husband came back, she would accompany him until they grew old. Although she no longer had her beauty, she already possessed the greatest happiness. The 2 women sighed softly. They felt sorry for the apothecary and his wife in the story, but they were also a little envious. In this world, how many men could make a woman not care about her appearance and only ask for a lifetime of companionship? How many women would truly understand this truth? Yu Rulan was even more distressed. Indeed, even if one's appearance did not age, what was the use if one could not find someone who could cherish, protect, and admire this beauty? If the person one loved the most could not see one's most beautiful face, in that case, what was the point of having peerless beauty and youthful youth? Ji Lingxi and Yu Rulan's thoughts were naturally different. Other than sighing, Ji Lingxi was also secretly delighted. Would one not age from now on? She only had to endure it for 3 years. Compared to a lifetime of beauty, 3 years was not a long time. Moreover, she could evade the pursuit perfectly. This was obviously a very good thing. Almost instantly Ji Lingxi thought, what's going on? Why can't I be angry at Yin Yang just now? It's a small greeting gift, please accept it. Yin Yang smiled and said, I hope Sister Lan and Lingxi will like it. Ji Lingxi snorted and forced herself to look as if she was not going to let it go. She said angrily, so what if your intention is good? What kind of tone is that when you talk to me? You're so old and infuriating. What do you mean by being obedient and listening to Sister Lan? Do you really think I'm a 3-year-old child? She had indeed pretended to be angry when she said these words, her eyes darting around as she spoke. However, she had really flared up towards the end. He really couldn't take this lying down. Yin Yang rubbed his nose. If he were to explain this matter clearly, would it not involve his eighth brother? Even the 9 Supremes? In spite of this, Yun Yang had yet to think of a way to minimize the blow to the 2 girls. After all, this matter was too cruel to them. After a pause, he said, "You're younger than Sister Lan. Who do you want to listen to if you don't listen to Sister Lan? Don't you want to listen to Sister Lan at all?" Ji Lingxi was speechless. "I don't think that's what I meant at all, okay? You're putting the blame on someone else, do you know that? Should I say, I like you so you can't talk to me like an elder? Wouldn't that be too embarrassing?" It was evening time. The maids that Yun Yang had mentioned earlier had finally arrived. When Ji Lingxi and Yu Rulan saw the maids, they were shocked once again. Every single one of these 4 maidservants looked to be around 14 or 15 years old. Every single one of them was exceptionally intelligent, naive, yet extremely quick-witted. What was even rarer was that every single one of them had a childlike heart, and this was absolutely not something that could be easily found. Lu Sanyang's disciples? Ji Lingxi asked. The 4 maids agreed, blushing. Even Yu Rulan was shocked. "I'm sorry, this chapter is only 2,000 words long. I've been writing for an entire afternoon, but I feel that the plot isn't right, so I've deleted it all. I want to start from another line, it'll feel better. However, this will require me to change the outline of the 500,000 words. That's why it's a headache now. It's also displeasing to write a direct rebuttal. It's even more displeasing to attack in a roundabout manner. Give me a night to sort it out. It's not that I don't have anything to write, but a few lines are fine. However, I have to weigh it and decide which path is more surprising and better. Just take it that I've taken half a day off." Chapter 313. The Lu Sanyang that Ji Lingxi spoke of was a merchant. However, the goods that this merchant was selling were people. How could a cultivator take a lowly character like a prostitute seriously? However, Lu Sanyang was no ordinary prostitute. She did business. She traveled around Tianxian searching for orphan girls from all over the world. Among them, she chose girls with outstanding looks, intelligence, and character and trained them. She made sure that the orphan girls she chose were well versed in poetry, music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. If the orphan girls were gifted in cultivation, she would not hesitate to teach them mystical qi cultivation methods and cultivation base. Only when these girls were accomplished in their studies would they be sold to noble families to be used as maids. Every one of these women was pure and intelligent. They were well-behaved and adorable. Their looks were not ordinary either. As for how to serve their masters, they were even more adept, caring, and meticulous. Such maids would never flirt or seduce their masters. Once the deal was made, the maids would be loyal to their masters and would never betray them. One could only imagine the exorbitant price of maids of such quality. The maids trained by Lu Sanyang were divided into 3 classes: Wen, Huang, and Blue. The maids in white were the best of the best. Any one of them could be sold for no less than 500,000 taels of silver. This kind of transaction price was something that even a wealthy family would flinch at. What Yun Yang had prepared for the 2 girls were actually maids dressed in white. In other words, he had spent at least 2 million silver taels just to serve the 2 of them. Even when the 2 girls were at home, they had never been able to enjoy such treatment. It was just that Yun Yang's attitude was too strange. Based on what Yu Rulan knew about Ji Lingxi's sweetheart and admirer, your thoughtful care is understandable. However, where did you come from and how did you speak to Ji Lingxi in such an old-fashioned tone? She thought to herself. Yu Rulan thought to herself. If one were to close their eyes and listen to it, almost every sentence sounded like a father or elder brother lecturing an ignorant daughter or sister. In the future, in front of outsiders, you will be my cousins. Yun Yang said, "We're not strong enough right now. We have to deal with the enemy first. When we're sure that we're safe, we'll make other arrangements. What do you say?" His words were directed at Yu Rulan. He was still as respectful to her as before, completely interested in her. Yu Rulan nodded and said, "Young Master Yun's arrangement is appropriate. I have no objections." Ji Lingxi asked, "Who's the elder cousin sister and who's the younger cousin sister?" Yun Yang frowned and said, "Is there a need to ask?" Ji Lingxi replied angrily, "It's understandable that Sister Lan is the elder cousin sister, but if you really want to argue about it, you're not necessarily older than me. Why do I have to be the younger cousin sister? Can't you have 2 cousins?" Yun Yang said unhappily, "Be good. Don't argue over these minor details. Sister Lan is injured, she needs rest. Don't make a fuss. Obedient? Ji Lingxi almost fainted. This tone again. This tone again. Are you trying to anger me to death? Even if what you said was reasonable and humane, it wasn't right to treat me like that, okay? Sister Lan? After Yunyang left, Ji Lingxi pouted and said unhappily, do you think there's something wrong with this bastard's brain? Tell me what's with his attitude. She said hesitantly, it wasn't like this the last time. She recalled the last time she left, and when she bid farewell to Yunyang, he had clearly shown some affection between a man and a woman. At the very least, the melancholy was real and genuine. If it were not so, Ji Lingxi would not have cherished the phoenix's cry so much. Although the phoenix's cry was a spiritual weapon that no one would give up on, the saber had another meaning to Ji Lingxi. The saber was a gift from Yunyang, a testament to the friendship between the two of them. But why did this guy suddenly act like an old man after going out for a stroll? What was wrong with him acting like an elder everywhere he went? If you're so capable, why don't you go to heaven instead? Ji Lingxi was fuming, but Yu Rulan was even more emotional. Although she was deeply in love with Ji Lingfeng and would not change even until death, she was extremely confident in her own looks. She could not understand why Yunyang kept calling her sister Lan and treated her like an elder since the moment they met. Could it be that her heart had aged but her face did not look old? Otherwise, why would Yunyang treat her like this? But when she was with her sisters, she was clearly very popular. In terms of appearance, temperament, and appearance, she was the most outstanding one. How could this be? Women were such strange creatures. As long as beauty and emotions were involved, their IQ would instantly drop to 0 or even go into the negative. The young lord had already arrived at Tiantang City and would arrive at the residence of Yun at any time. Yunyang had to be prepared. Of course, Yunyang would not sit idly by. The 4 noble young masters were waiting for him to train the mystical beasts. Their necks had grown long from the wait. How could Yunyang forget that he still had a great help when a strong enemy could come knocking on his door at any time? Let spring, summer, autumn, and winter come over with their mystical spiritual beasts. Yunyang said generously, I'll work hard for a few days to help them look after their mystical beasts. In less than an hour, Dong Qianling and the other 3 gathered at the residence of Yun. Their gazes towards Yunyang were filled with resentment. Qiu Yunsan and the other 2 had come with their mystical beasts. They were here for serious business. As for Dong Qianling, his family had yet to get their hands on the mystical beast. Therefore, young Master Dong Qianling's arrival this time was purely to cause trouble. This fellow only had one simple thought. Since he did not manage to get his hands on the mystical beasts, the rest of them would not have an easy time either. It was a typical slut's mentality. Don't look at me with such resentful gazes. Those who don't know better will wonder what I've done to all of you. Yunyang said, haven't I been busy recently? Don't tell me all of you don't know? The 4 young masters were extremely resentful. We really didn't see how busy you were. It's so awkward for us to stay in Tiantang City now. They had nothing to do every day and dared not roam around. Sira's house, the last place they could spend their time, was gone. The only thing they could do was to gather together and brag. The 4 of them played mahjong and gambled every day. After playing for so long, they had gradually lost interest in gambling. None of them were lacking money. In the end, they decided to gamble with their banknotes. Whoever lost would have to tear their banknotes into shreds. There was a set number of shreds. But after playing this game for a few days, he was tired of it. It was rare for them to meet you, but it was to help you pick up girls and put on an act. We simply couldn't find a reason for us to be here anymore. The 4 of us gathered together every day. Could it be that we were really gay? Although we're gay friends, we can't really be gay. It's so chaotic out there now. The 4 Seasons Tower is about to subdue the world by force and bathe the martial world in blood. Logically speaking, we should go back as soon as possible and hide in the safety of our homes. That's the best option. However, we have to stay here and wait for your summons because of this mystical beast cub. Take out your pig. Take out your bear. Take out your tiger. Yunyang turned to look at Dong Qianling. What about you? Dong Qianling sighed, his face dejected. I can only take out my bird. Go to hell. Find a place where there's no one to play with your bird. Everyone, including Yunyang, looked at him in disdain, wishing they could just beat this fellow up. But in the next moment, everyone's eyes widened in unison. Dong Qianling had actually taken out a bird. His hand stretched out from his embrace. In his palm was a young bird that had just hatched. It looked like it could not even stand properly. Everyone was dumbfounded and speechless. Even Yunyang was speechless. The mystical beast cub that Dong Qianling had taken out was, without a doubt, a bird cub. However, this bird was exceptionally unusual. Just by looking at the newly hatched cub, one could tell what kind of bird it was. Naturally, it had an extraordinary appearance. My family came across this by accident and sent it to me. Dong Qianling looked as if he had nothing left to live for. I didn't expect my family to be so resourceful, to actually be able to get a flying mystical beast. Chun Wanfeng stared at the trembling bird for a long time before he finally grinned. Not bad indeed. The Dong family is indeed resourceful. I'm impressed. Yun Yang, however, was exasperated. This bird, a nestling that had just hatched, had circles of black inscriptions around its eyes. Its nose was right in the middle of its eyes with two tiny holes. Its beak was pointed and long. This bird's appearance was so ugly that it would definitely be hated by anyone who saw it. Phantom vulture. There was no mistaking it. This is indeed the offspring of a 7th-level pinnacle mystical beast. It's not easy for your family to get their hands on it. Yun Yang looked like he wanted to beat someone up. It's just that this thing really makes me want to curse. Phantom vulture, a 7th-level pinnacle mystical beast. It flew fast, had a ferocious temperament, and its combat ability was not weak either. However, there was a flaw. This kind of vulture had a very annoying habit. Its food was carrion, which meant that it only ate dead bodies. It ate nothing else. Moreover, it only ate the rotten flesh of the dead, nothing else. It was said that once a phantom vulture hatched, it would be abandoned by the mother bird. This meant that from the day it hatched, this phantom vulture would have to survive on its own, without the buffer of nurturing and adaptation. However, this habit of the phantom vulture did not attract any attention. In spite of this, other mystical beasts rarely bullied them. This was because the phantom vulture carried corpse poison from the day it was born. Although the poison that the phantom vulture was born with was not very potent, the poison of a newborn phantom vulture was even milder. Even if it were to be directly used on a human body, it would not cause too much harm, but it would still make people uncomfortable. It could be said that the phantom vulture was the most disgusting, most disliked and least reared flying mystical beast in the Tianshan continent. It was too easy to obtain this mystical beast. One only needed to pick it up in the dense forest. Since it was abandoned at birth, it would not be hunted by other mystical beasts. Therefore, it would be a piece of cake to obtain such a young one. The problem was what would happen after obtaining it. How would you raise it? It would eat corpses every day, the rotten kind. Where would you raise it? Just at home? Do you still want your home? It would stink every day. Wouldn't your home become as eerie and terrifying as hell? Looking at this tiny cub, everyone couldn't help but pinch their noses. Their eyes were filled with undisguised loathing. It's true that the bird is like the person. Yun Yang was infuriated. What do you mean by bringing this thing to my house? Do you want to turn my house into a rotting ground? Chapter 3:14. Boss, please don't. Dong Qianling begged, I have no choice. What can I do when the family sends it over? Give me a chance, won't you? Get out. Take your bird and get out of here. Yun Yang did not say another word, mercilessly ordering his guest to leave. What do you mean by bringing this thing to my house? In order to feed this bird, are you going to bring over a few rotting corpses? Dong Qianling's family experts were speechless at the situation. What did he mean by the family sending it over? Since the beginning of time, which family could be so immoral to do something so immoral? Picking up a phantom vulture to raise? Dong Qianling had gone to the mystical beast market out of boredom these few days and was tricked into buying an egg. It was actually a phantom vulture when it hatched. This fellow had insisted on showing it to Yun Yang to try his luck. This had nothing to do with the family at all. Don't ruin our family's reputation. Dong Qianling looked like he was about to cry as he threw the phantom vulture hatchling to the ground and said, I knew this fellow was a jinx. I'll go wash my hands now. The phantom vulture hatchling staggered as it was thrown to the ground and squeaked. Its tiny eyes darted around before it suddenly sprinted over and hugged Yun Yang's leg. Before Yun Yang could vent his anger, he was unexpectedly hugged by the phantom vulture hatchling. He was even more furious. I asked you to throw it out. I didn't ask you to leave it in my house. Now this disgusting phantom vulture actually treats me as its owner. But this little bird that had just hatched, wasn't its speed a little too fast? An adult phantom vulture's flying speed was not slow, but this was the speed of moving on the ground. Yun Yang was puzzled by the current situation for a moment before he saw the little bird crawl up from his feet. It crawled all the way to his feet and laid down comfortably with its limbs spread out. Yun Yang grew increasingly disgusted. This was not a good thing. It was known as the dirtiest mystical beast in the world, Yet he had to chase it away and consider if he should just stomp it to death. It was so disgusting that it was worse than stepping on dog feces. At this moment, Aya? Emmy moved in the sea of consciousness, sending a message. Yun-Yang was stunned. He was surprised to feel a breath of life being transmitted to the little phantom vulture silently. Had Emmy taken the initiative to give it a breath of life? What was going on? This little miser, when did he become so generous? The little cub immediately screeched with joy, and even its spirits were lifted. Its two bare little wings flapped for a while. What's going on? Emmy? Why are you so generous this time? Aya, isn't that a phantom vulture? Aya? Yun-Yang looked at the tiny cub by his feet with a complicated gaze. This little thing was not a phantom vulture? But no matter how you looked at it, it was obvious. Dong Qianling had taken the little fellow out from his embrace just now. Even if the poison in the nestling of the phantom vulture was faint, Dong Qianling did not seem to be affected at all when he had it in his embrace. Yun-Yang immediately thought of something else that was not right. Forget it, it's a life anyway. Yun-Yang activated his movie king mode and sighed faintly. Lao Mei, keep it. The experts from the noble families were puzzled by Yun-Yang's reaction. The phantom vulture was one of the mystical beasts that could not be tamed since the beginning of time. Coupled with its hideous appearance, it did not even qualify to be an ornamental object, not to mention that this creature would not eat anything other than rotting carcasses. What was the point of keeping it? The thoughts of these worldly young masters were incomprehensible. They were disgusted to death just now. Why were they suddenly moved by compassion? The residence of Yun is huge and everyone has to look after their mystical beasts as well as ensure the needs of the little ones. Let us stay in the residence of Yun for now. Yun-Yang said, it's a good time to renovate and split the yard into 4. Everyone will be together from the beginning to the end so we can avoid the problem of miscommunication. Of course, everyone agreed with this suggestion. It was more than what they could ask for. The 4 families had been worried that their mystical beasts would become Yun-Yangs as they cultivated them. That would be troublesome. Now that they could watch over them from time to time, there was no need to worry about this. The residence of Heavenly Clouds was huge. Not only did it have a main house, there were also 4 courtyards in the north, south, east, and west. As the residence of a marquis, it would definitely exceed that of an ordinary official. Other than Lao Mei, Fang Mafei, and Bai Shue, there was no one else around Yun-Yang. More than 80% of the rooms in the huge residence of Yun were empty. Now, the spring and summer families stayed in the west guest room while the autumn and winter families stayed in the south guest room. Yun-Yang, on the other hand, moved into the main house that had been reserved for Marquis Yun. As for the small house that Yun-Yang had stayed in the north, it was now occupied by Ji Lingxi, Yu Rulan, and the 4 young maids. In this way, the residence of Yun, which was originally deserted, was suddenly filled with people. After Yun-Yang had settled everyone from the 4 families, he went to his room with the excuse of taking a break. Of course, he brought the disgusting phantom vulture along with him. His priority now was to figure out what this thing was. How did the saying go? A toad that doesn't bite is disgusting. If it were not for Emmy's interference, this little fellow would have been smashed into meat paste by Yun-Yang. Of course, the little fellow did not know how annoying it was at its current stage. Yun-Yang called out to it and it hopped over excitedly. It did not look like the one who could not even stand properly when it had just appeared. Perhaps it was because Yun-Yang's summoning was too effective or that Emmy's air of vitality had provided the energy, but Yun-Yang's summoning was more reliable. After all, the little fellow had just seen Yun-Yang and was already full of energy running to him. Tell me quickly what is going on. Emmy? Yun-Yang asked. Aya. Emmy's vines fluttered and danced. You say this isn't a phantom vulture? Then this is... Yun-Yang was stunned. According to Emmy, this little fellow was definitely not a phantom vulture. It should be a rare and superior species. However, no matter how Yun-Yang looked at it, he felt that it was a phantom vulture. There was no difference at all. It was a disgusting creature no matter how he looked at it. Since Emmy had never missed its mark so far, Yun-Yang suppressed his discomfort and held the little fellow in his palm to observe it carefully. The little fellow stared at Yun-Yang with its round eyes as well. The eyes, the nose, the mouth, the appearance, it was a phantom vulture. There was no difference at all. This image was the embodiment of the rumored phantom vulture. If one were to insist on the difference between this little fellow and a phantom vulture. This little thing did not seem to have the stench of a corpse that the phantom vulture was born with. Yun Yang suddenly recalled that one of the main reasons why the phantom vulture was regarded as the dirtiest and most disgusting flying mystical beast in this world was that it carried an indescribable stench when it hatched from its shell. The stench during that period of time could not be tolerated by anyone or any living creature. Perhaps, it should be said that the reason the phantom vulture chicks were abandoned by their mother the moment they hatched was because of the indescribable stench. Yun Yang could understand this feeling. The couple had been eagerly waiting for the egg to hatch, fully expecting a beautiful baby to come out, but an ugly creature had popped out of nowhere. It was fine if it was an ugly creature. However, this ugly creature carried a stench that could almost poison one to death with just a whiff. To think that they would have to endure this stench and raise it into a bird? How long would that take? The eagle couple might really die from the stench in such a long period of time. If it had been someone else, the young couple would have exclaimed, F***ck me. Did I give birth to this? Then they would have fled with their noses covered. Abandoning it was actually a natural reaction of a bird. It was understandable. As Yun Yang thought of this, he suddenly had a strange thought: could I have been abandoned because I was stinky when I was born? As he thought about it, he chuckled to himself. This was absolutely impossible. He was so handsome. How could there be a time when I was stinky? It was impossible, it should not be. As for the little fellow in front of him, not only did it not have the disgusting stench, it even had a faint milky fragrance. Yun Yang observed as he pondered. Since he had the thought that the little fellow before him was not a phantom vulture, it was easier to focus on the key points of observation. After a careful examination, he found a few other characteristics that were different from the phantom vulture chicks. According to the data, the phantom vulture's claws had 4 fingers, but this little fellow was different. Each of its claws only had 3 fingers, but it was steady when it stepped on the ground. Besides, Yun Yang found a faint white trail on top of its head, going all the way down from the back of its head to the base of its tail. Even the phantom vulture did not have this. You mean, what breed is this little fellow? You actually don't know either? Yun Yang was confused. Then why are you reacting like this? What? Yun Yang was utterly shocked. You said that this little fellow carries the aura of the Holy Phoenix's bloodline? Really? Yun Yang was utterly shocked by Emmy's answer. It was utterly unbelievable. The Holy Phoenix? How could this be? The phoenix and the dragon had always been mythical beasts, or rather, sacred beasts. They had always existed in legends. No one had ever seen them. No one could be sure if these 2 mystical creatures existed in this world. However, the more it was so, the more precious and rare the mystical beasts with the bloodline of the mythical beasts were. Now, Emmy could actually sense that this little clown in front of him had the bloodline of the phoenix. Yun Yang was dumbfounded. How could Dong Qianling be so lucky? Took up a few words. I made a mistake in the previous chapter. Before uploading it, I would edit it one last time word by word. When I uploaded the last chapter, I would edit about 20 to 30 places on average. After the last chapter was edited, I copied it and uploaded it. Somehow, the words that had been edited and deleted appeared as well. Everyone said that many words were repeated and many sentences were illogical. Those were all edited by me. However, I don't know why the words that had been deleted by me would appear when I copied and uploaded it. There was no other way. As long as I accessed the backend, I could edit the chapters again. However, the Cheetian app had a flaw. As long as you did not uninstall and re-download the app after reading the subscribed chapters, you would not be able to see the edited chapters. You would have to re-download the app to see the edited chapters. I'm speechless about this as well. All in all, because of this mistake today, I've allowed everyone to see one of my working processes. It's true, I still don't understand how this could happen. The experts in the group helped me research for a long time and came to a conclusion. You're stupid. I'm so miserable. Chapter 315. Phoenix Bloodline. Therefore, when Yun Yang looked at the little thing again, he felt that the little fellow's hideous appearance was so pleasing to the eye. At least, it was handsome and had a distinct bone structure. Yun Yang could not help sighing inwardly. Humans are despicable to their very bones. When they don't like something, they don't like it no matter how much they look at it. Once they know the benefits, they'll become pleasing to the eye no matter how much they dislike it. I didn't expect that even the brilliant and mighty young Master Yun would have such a reaction. I almost made a mistake. This is clearly a good thing. Dong Qianling? Yun Yang called out as he stepped out of the door. Dong Qianling came over eagerly. Boss? What can I do for you? This little brother will definitely be at your beck and call without any hesitation. It's like this. Although Yun Yang was reluctant, this was still Dong Qianling's. Let me tell you something. This bird of yours is very unusual. I suggest that you raise him well. The corners of Dong Qianling's lips twitched as he looked at the phantom vulture. He shook his head vigorously. No, 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 don't. I would only want it if I was sick. The phantom vulture. Yun Yang frowned. This bird is not a phantom vulture. Only a ghost would believe that. Which part of him did not look like a phantom vulture? Boss. Dong Qianling was in a bad mood. You don't have to trick me like this, do you? If I really bring it home, won't I be beaten to death immediately? I really don't want to. I hate it just by looking at it. Dong Qianling gritted his teeth, determined not to give in. Yun Yang sighed and whispered into Dong Qianling's ear, this bird has the bloodline of the phoenix. Dong Qianling looked at the phantom vulture, then at Yun Yang, dumbfounded. Boss, you're really going all out in order to deceive me. This damn thing. Phoenix bloodline? I almost believed it. Anyway, I don't want it. Boss, if you really don't want it, just throw it away. Dong Qianling looked disgusted. Forget about the phoenix's bloodline, even if it was a phoenix. I wouldn't want it. Yun Yang's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Am I that untrustworthy? Afraid that Yun Yang would try to persuade him again, Dong Qianling quickly said, Boss, I'm leaving. Before Yun Yang could speak, Dong Qianling had already disappeared with a swoosh. His speed was incomparably fast, as if there was an evil spirit chasing after him. Walking out of the small yard, Dong Qianling wiped off his cold sweat, still fearful. The bloodline of the phoenix. Boss, I almost believed you if you didn't mention the bloodline of the phoenix. What a trap. I almost believed you. Yun Yang was dumbfounded. Not even the phoenix bloodline? Fine, if you don't want it, I want it. Yun Yang held the little fellow and murmured, since you're not a phantom vulture and you still have that bloodline, Dong Qianling doesn't want you anymore, you can only follow your master from now on. The little fellow's skinny legs stood in Yun Yang's palm, looking indifferent. Since you're following me, I need to give you a name. The more Yun Yang looked at the little fellow, the more he liked him. He said gently, what name should I give you? Or the white series? Black and white. The little creature bounced on Yun Yang's hand, tilting its head and chirping twice. No, there are already too many whiteys. Besides, you only have a few white lines. It's too much to call you whiteys. Especially when you're so ugly and your voice is like a squeaky squeaky. It has nothing to do with whiteys. How about this, you can choose one of the two names. Either Chaochu or Gigi. Yun Yang passed the choice to the little creature. How could the little creature understand what he was saying? It looked at Yun Yang for a while with its head tilted, feeling the warmth of Yun Yang's palm. It felt comfortable all over and jumped twice on Yun Yang's hand happily. You jumped twice. Obviously you like the second name very much. This master will respect your choice. Your name from now on will be Gigi. Yun Yang made the final decision. The little creature raised its head happily and chirped twice. Looks like you really like it. Yun Yang decided. From then on, the little thing had a name that could make people feel dizzy. According to the usual writing style of a novel, it would be written, from then on until tens of thousands of years later, so-and-so's mighty so-and-so is still regretting it because this very unsightly name is, it can be said that a single misstep brings everlasting regret. However, I don't want to write it that way. Since he had adopted this little creature, of course he had to feed it. Yun Yang brought some leaves first, but the little creature shook its head in disdain and refused to eat it. Steamed buns? Not eating. Noodles? Not eating. Meat? Even more disdainful. It was only when Yun Yang took out a bunch of fruits and sent it over tentatively that the little thing's eyes shone. It hopped onto the fruit reluctantly and started munching on it, its mouth full of juice. Looks like it really isn't a phantom vulture. Yun Yang was relieved. A phantom vulture would not eat fruits. However, he frowned immediately. If this creature only eats fruits, then what fruit supply can there be in this winter? This is a little tricky. This was the truth. It was already winter. Even some wealthy families would rarely have fruits to eat. However, this little creature was obviously not interested in other food. It was very disdainful. What should he do? Now that it had suddenly snowed, there were probably a few peaches, pears, and apples left at home. What would he do when they were finished? Especially when the appetite of a mystical beast was unusually large. However, the little creature did not care about this. Having eaten and drunk its fill, it staggered 2 steps and climbed up Yun Yang's trousers, crawling into Yun Yang's pocket on its own. At this moment, Whitey 4 was sleeping inside. Naturally, it meowed in dissatisfaction at this uninvited guest, but the little fellow ignored it and crawled inside. It used its butt to push Whitey 4 away a little, then buried its head in its crotch and curled into a small ball of fur, falling asleep just like that. Whitey 4 glared at the little creature that had appeared out of nowhere, its whiskers quivering. It was obviously about to erupt in anger. After all, it was a 9th-level pinnacle mystical beast. How could the dignity of a high-level mystical beast be offended? In spite of this, Whitey 4 leaped out of Yun Yang's pocket with a swoosh, meowing incessantly as if it had been greatly frightened. Her big, colorful eyes were filled with lingering fear. "Oh my God, Master, why did you keep this thing in? It's so scary." Yun Yang looked at the 2 apple skins and 2 peach cores in his hands. Other than being dumbfounded, he was speechless. This little creature, including its fluffy fur, was not even as big as an apple. It had only taken a moment to finish 2 big apples and 2 peaches that were even bigger than apples. That was food that was 5 to 6 times more than its body mass. This, even if it was a mystical beast with a huge appetite, was it not? With such a small size, there should be a limit no matter how big its stomach was. How could its stomach and appetite not match at all? Where did it go? Could it be that this little creature's stomach was actually connected to some ocean? Could he actually afford to feed a creature with such an appetite? This was a problem. Yun Yang was deeply doubtful about this. However, Yun Yang recalled his gluttonous appetite from some time ago. It seemed like it had disappeared after a large amount of food. For a moment, he felt like he was in the same boat with this little creature. "I was abandoned too, you were abandoned too. However, you're worse off than me. You've been abandoned twice." Yun Yang sighed. "Let's live a good life together from now on." Sigh. The little creature was snoring away with its butt in the air. It did not hear Yun Yang's sentiments at all, so naturally, it did not have any feelings to speak of. When he saw Dong Qianling again, Yun Yang's gaze was exceptionally complicated, so was his emotions. This guy seemed to be a lucky general. Although this guy didn't know or recognize anything, he was still able to bring all these things back. He did not even want a good person. Cough cough. Yun Yang said, "Lung lung." Dong Qianling jumped up reflexively. "Boss, I really don't want it. Please don't shove it into me." Yun Yang was exasperated. "It's not this, it's something else." Dong Qianling perked up and said with a fawning smile, "Boss, what orders do you have? Do you want me to drug the mystical beasts from the 3 families? Yin Yang was at a loss for words. "You have to change the direction of your thinking in the future. It won't do if you keep acting like this." Yun Yang commented honestly. It was also a sincere warning. After all, he had taken someone else's great opportunity. Although Yun Yang did not have much of a conscience, he still had a little bit of it. "Boss, you don't know." Dong Qianling flipped his hair and put on a dashing look as he said, "I'm a tiny leaf that crosses the river. I'm well aware of this." "A tiny leaf crossing the river?" Yun Yang was puzzled. "What do you mean?" "He's relying on the force of the waves." A voice came from the side as Chiu Yun-san walked out with an annoyed expression. "Dong Qianling, this bastard, actually wants to drug our mystical beast." "What a bastard. More importantly, this fellow is really capable of doing it." "Right." Yun Yang said, "Yun-sen, do you still remember the bet between you and me, Kongchuan?" Chiu Yun-san looked miserable at once as he said pitifully, "Boss, you just have to rub it in." "Sai, the bet with me Kongchuan back then was related to the mystical spiritual medicine, luminary paste. It was the divine medicine that the 4 noble young masters had been yearning for. Now that me Kongchuan had confirmed that it was over, it was even more impossible for him to get his hands on it. It was also because of this that Chiu Yun-san had always been a laughingstock among his brothers. Now that Yun Yang had mentioned it, it was obvious that he was rubbing salt into the wound that had yet to heal. That feeling was indescribable. If Dong Qianling and the others had mentioned it, Chiu Yun-san might have fought them right away. However, he dared not make a single move against Yun Yang, gritting his teeth and enduring it. Dong Qianling, who was standing at the side, laughed gloatingly. "What do you mean by rub it in? Do you think I'm you? Of course, I have a reason to mention it. I brought it back for all of you." Yun Yang said, "Here." As he spoke, he took out 4 portions of luminary paste that he had obtained from Mi Kongchuan. Yun Yang wanted to make it up to them after receiving such a huge benefit. It was then that he remembered the luminary paste. Chiu Yun-san's eyes shone brightly at once. Dong Qianling cursed as well, his eyes bulging. Chapter 316. Chun Wanfeng and Xia Bingchuan had popped out of nowhere as well. Their 4 pairs of eyes were glowing with an eerie green glow as they stared at the luminary paste in Yun Yang's hands. "This was found among Mi Kongchuan's belongings. I have connections in the palace. It's a dead man's business, it doesn't cost me anything." Yunyang gave a simple explanation. However, how could Dong Tianling and the others listen to his explanation? Who would care where this thing came from? As long as the genuine item was right before their eyes and they could get their hands on it, was everything else important? They were already scratching their ears and cheeks in impatience. This was the legendary item of fantasy that could make a man invincible. The man I've been dreaming of, mine. Chiu Yun-san shouted and rushed forward. Then his body flew out. It was at the same time he charged forward that Dong Tianling, Chun Wanfeng and Xia Bingchuan gave a kick at the same time without anyone noticing. At this moment, the three popinjays had unleashed the highest realm of their martial skills. This kick came and went without a trace, and it was miraculous beyond compare. Just as Chiu Yun-san finished his declaration, he was kicked by three large feet at the same time and was flung out like a gold ingot. His buttocks landed on the ground with a groan in his throat. "Boss mine," Chun Wanfeng said. "Boss mine," Xia Bingchuan said. "Boss, give me one, don't give it to Chiu Yun-san. He can't do it, it'll be a waste if he eats it," Dong Tianling said. "Boss." Chiu Yun-san dashed back at the speed of light. "Don't listen to Dong Tianling. This bastard really doesn't know anything other than destroying the unity. He doesn't listen to a single word." Yunyang shook his head in amusement. "What are you guys fighting for? There are 4 portions here. Isn't it just right for each of you?" The 4 of them raised their heads and looked at Yunyang in shock. "Boss, don't you want it?" Yunyang did not know whether to laugh or cry. So this was the purpose of these 4 fellows' competition. 4 portions of luminary paste to be shared among 5 people. Of course one of them would not have it. Yunyang's portion had always been fixed among the 4 of them. If he did not take it out, no one would have it. As for the other 4, one of them had to miss. The 4 of them were calculating in their hearts. Since there has to be one person who can't get it, that person definitely can't be me. It was fortunate that the 4 of them had developed a bond after so many years and that they were in Yunyang's house. Otherwise, with these fellows' tempers, they might have stirred up trouble. "Forget about me." Yunyang smiled. "I don't have such a need for now. On the other hand, the few of you are in a terrible deficit. Let's focus on you first." "Thank you, boss. Thank you for giving me a new lease of life, boss." The 4 of them spoke in unison, and all of them beamed with delight. They were complacent and high-spirited. As for what Yunyang had said about the few of them having a huge deficit, the few of them did not take it to heart. So what if I have a huge deficit? One must know that there is a poem that says, "Youth is not wasted. Who can you find when you are young?" The beauty was like a flower for a few years, waiting for her white hair to turn into empty tears. Besides, what's the big deal about being scolded a few times? As long as I get my hands on this thing, I'll be awesome in the future. That was the legendary golden spear does not fall. The highest state of being a man. It looked like a new page of legend in the Wind Moon realm would have to be written by the few of us. Holding the luminary paste of their dreams, the 4 brothers who had realized their dreams were grinning so widely that their eyes could not be seen. To the 4 popinjays, even the mystical beast offspring's upgrade that they had been longing for was far less important than this. Chiu Yun-san took deep breaths, deep breaths, deep breaths. He tried his best to suppress his surging emotions, trying his best to be steady, calm, and dignified. Then he took a look at the luminary paste and swallowed it without even taking a sip of the water. He swallowed it in one go, but it seemed to be blocked once it entered his mouth. The luminary paste was a paste after all and had a certain amount of weight. It was difficult for it to go with the flow. Eldest young Master Chiu stretched his neck and tried his best to swallow it, his handsome face flushed. "Drink some water quickly. You'll be fine once it's smooth." An expert from the Chiu family quickly brought over a bowl of water. Step by step. Chiu Yun-san waved his hands forcefully and said with difficulty, holding it in will dilute the medicinal effect." Everyone was instantly dumbfounded. Chiu Yun-san had really gone all out for this legendary medicinal effect. Did he not know that choking someone to death could also choke them to death? The people from the other 3 families sighed in relief. It was fortunate that their young masters were not as embarrassing as Chiu Yun-san. This was so embarrassing that it could even reach one's grandmother's house. Everyone who was thinking about this was speechless as they turned to look. Chun Wanfeng, Dong Tianling, and Xia Bingchuan were stretching their necks as well, their eyes rolling back as they tried their best to swallow something. Their appearance was a direct copy of Chiu Yun-san's, even worse than Chiu Yun-san. After all, Chiu Yun-san's appearance was the best among the 4 of them. In comparison, he had actually won. Looks could really show off one's superiority at any time and place, even at this moment. A few guards hurried over and tried their best to pat the backs of the 3 noble young masters to soothe their breathing. After all, looking at their postures, they might really die from suffocation. Yun-yang was not only covered in goosebumps, but goosebumps were all over the floor. I say, this matter, is it really that important? No matter what, the four of you are the direct descendants of a family with identity, position, and standpoint, alright? Is it really alright to throw away your integrity just for a little benefit of the lower half of your bodies? Yun-yang could not understand everything that was happening. Dong Qianling and the other three were rolling their eyes as they looked at Yun-yang, chuckling. The chuckle was actually filled with a condescending tone. It was like an experienced and knowledgeable city dweller looking at a country bumpkin who came from the incomparably rural countryside. Ignorant, no common sense, insensible, how contemptuous. The four of them felt an overwhelming sense of superiority at the same time. After all, since they had first met Yun-yang, the four of them had been treated as his lackeys. Now that they could actually gain the upper hand over Yun-yang, all four of them at the same time, how could they not be elated and high-spirited? It was already an act of restraint not to be arrogant and domineering. Dong Qianling finally let out a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "There are some things that you won't know if you haven't experienced it, boss." "Yes, you haven't experienced it. Of course, a beginner wouldn't understand it. Actually, let me tell you." He frowned and racked his brain for a long time before coming up with a relatively suitable metaphor. How much a woman values her appearance, how much a man values this. Do you understand now? Yun-yang was dumbfounded. I don't. Ha ha. Dong Qianling and the other three men chuckled meaningfully. Boss, you're still young, but you'll understand in the future. Yun-yang felt that he was not feeling well. F***CK, are you fellows looking for a beating? How dare you speak to your father in such a condescending tone? Do you believe that your father will turn your mystical beasts into food at any moment? Yun-yang's gaze was exceptionally hostile. He was not completely unaware of the underlying meaning of the four men's words. Even if he had never seen a pig run or seen a pig being slaughtered, it had been mentioned in novels after all. What really annoyed Yun-yang was that he really was a beginner. He really did not have the experience of a man like the four men. He actually could not refute them. At least in this aspect, he really could not compare to the four popinjays. The rumored leader of Yutong's popinjays did not live up to his name. It was hard to live up to his reputation. There was only an empty title beneath it. This was something that Yun-yang could not tolerate and could not let go of. Is it a sin to be a beginner? What's the big deal if I don't experience it? Still, I've secretly kept one for myself. I'll see if I can use it in the future, but this is a matter of pride, I can't say it. The four of them suddenly felt that they had really gotten carried away. How could it be so easy to take advantage of their boss? Thinking about it, they chuckled sheepishly. Boss is wise and mighty. Whether it's now or in the future, he won't be able to use this thing. Haven't the few of us already lost it? Sigh, there's nothing we can do. These four fellows were experts at playing along with the wind, so they quickly made themselves sound more pitiful to redeem themselves. Yun-yang snorted sarcastically but did not argue with them. After all, if he were to argue about this matter, he would only lower himself further. Right, Dong Qianling, your family hasn't gotten any mystical beast babies yet. You've finally gotten a phantom vulture and you've given it to me, Dong Qianling blinked. Given it to you? When did I give it to you? Didn't I just throw it away? How can that thing be given away? Giving it to someone would be offending them. Is boss implying that I've offended him because I didn't want it? Dong Qianling squinted his eyes and said, it's all because boss is willing to do me the honor. Boss is wise and mighty, benefiting the world and the people. Those who want to give something to boss can line up from Tiantang City all the way to the borderless sea. Boss won't even accept it when others want to give it to him. Only this little brother can still have some face with boss. I feel honored. Chiu Yun-san and the other two turned around, feeling an itch in their throats. They truly wanted to retch a few times to vent the disgust in their hearts. They were no strangers to bootlicking. Each of them was an expert at it. However, it was the first time they had seen someone who could do it so shamelessly and without limits. Dong Qianling's integrity was not as simple as just dropping to the bottom. It was completely gone. How could something like a phantom vulture be considered a gift? This was obviously something that was meant to disgust people. Giving such a thing to someone was the best way to start a feud, okay? As they thought about it, the three of them were suddenly stunned. Gift? Phantom vulture? Could it be that boss really meant that he wanted to keep the phantom vulture? Boss, you're not thinking of keeping that thing, are you? Chiu Yun-san's eyes widened as he looked at Yun-yang in horror. Boss, this can't be kept. Chapter 317. Chun Wanfeng chimed in as well. Boss, we all know that you're a magnanimous and forgiving man, but you don't have to put yourself down for Dong Qianling's sake. We all know what the phantom vulture is like. Xia Bingchuan chimed in as well. That's right, that's right. Yunyang nodded, his smile exceptionally gentle. You've all misunderstood me. I really want to raise it and see if I can train it to eat other things as it grows, if I can change its inherent habits, if I can tame it in the end. After all, the phantom vulture is a flying mystical beast, its combat power is rather impressive and its overall quality is decent. As long as there's no need to worry about the corpse poison, everything else will be fine. He pointed at his pocket and said, Look, I fed this little fellow an apple just now. It's asleep now after eating its fill, there's no rotting smell coming from it at all. It's enough to prove that my deduction might be true. The four noble young masters looked at the phantom vulture that had curled up into a ball in Yun Yang's pocket, their mouths hanging wide open. How could this work? Wasn't this too immediate and obvious? I've even given it a nice name, Gigi. Yun Yang chuckled. The four young masters felt like they had been struck by lightning. The name was really well chosen. Boss is indeed brilliant, intelligent, far-sighted, and cunning. Dong Qianling exclaimed in admiration. Boss actually has the ability to foresee the future, knowing that we're eating this luminary paste today for, cough cough. Ha, you've actually named it beforehand. Boss's unfathomable wisdom is truly admirable. Xiao Yun-san and the others felt like they were in a bad mood. What do you want us to say when you're King sucking up? Is your flattery a compliment or a demeaning one? That's right, boss is brilliant. The three of them looked like they were in pain. Forget it, with Dong Qianling as an example, we can forget about our so-called integrity. Yun Yang glanced at the four fellows in disdain and said, I've never seen people as shameless as the four of you. The four of them immediately had miserable expressions on their faces. They had unspeakable bitterness. Right, where was I? Yun Yang knocked on his head. Boss, you just said that you've given it a name called Gigi. It's a good name. You'll be able to enter the realm of love and blend in with the scenery? Xia Bingchuan replied enthusiastically. His words were filled with flattery, and he even had an extremely wretched expression on his face. Yun Yang glared at him and said, But this way, Dong Qianling, you won't have mystical beast cubs to nurture anymore. Your family didn't send you any new cubs, did they? But since I've accepted your gift, I can't let you suffer a loss. How about this? Before his words echoed in the air, Yun Yang's hand shook and a sword appeared in it. This was a sword that looked like a belt. It was soft like a snake. With a casual shake of the hand, it swayed back and forth in the air. You can have this sword. Yun Yang said, Take it as your compensation or a gift in return for the little fellow you gave me. In any case, this sword is yours. I obtained this treasured sword, Spirited Krite. It's not a bad choice to use it as a belt when I'm not using it. Without the need for Yun Yang's introduction, the three great young masters, other than Dong Qianling, stared at the sword in Dong Qianling's hand in unison. As for the experts of the four noble families who had been looking up at the sky and could not bear to listen to these people's conversation, they turned their heads abruptly and stared at the sword in Dong Qianling's hand with burning gazes. As for Dong Qianling himself, he was dumbstruck. His mind was blank as he held the treasured sword, Spirited Krite. Spirited Krite? Chun Wanfeng roared, almost going mad with envy and jealousy. Boss, is this the legendary treasured sword, Spirited Krite? You gave it to him just like that? To Dong Qianling? It was not only Chun Wanfeng who had lost his composure, Xia Bingchuan and Qiu Wanfeng looked like they were about to break down as well. Why not me? Why not me? Just him, Dong Qianling. How does he deserve the treasured sword, Spirited Krite? Boss, you're wasting God's gift by doing this. You're insulting this godly weapon. The three noble young masters were heartbroken. The treasured sword, Spirited Krite, is said to be the personal weapon of the sword devil Linghu Buchong, 3,500 years ago. The main material of this sword is the celestial metal, lacerated meteorite silver. Other than its sharpness and ability to cut through iron like mud, it also has the special effect of lacerating one's fingers and being extremely flexible. When it's used, it's indestructible with a shake of the wind. When not in use, it can be tucked around the waist as a belt. It's convenient to carry around and can appear and disappear unpredictably. It's truly an unparalleled weapon for killing and robbing. A ninth peak expert from the Dong family looked at the sword in Dong Qianling's hand and shook his head in glee. This sword has long become a legend of Tianxuan's famed sword. It's also one of the top 10 famed swords recognized by countless swordsmen in Tianshan continent for the past 10,000 years. It's been at least 3,000 years since the last time this sword appeared. Ever since Linghu Buchong retired from the martial arts world and disappeared without a trace, there's no news of this sword. I didn't expect it to appear now and belong to my young master. What a great sword. This sword and my young master are a match made in heaven. Young Master Yun really knows how to read people and is a man of noble character and unquestionable integrity. Both of them are the same. Chun Wanfeng and the other two young masters grew even more indignant as they rebuked, "Nonsense. Nonsense. Dong Qianling can only be matched with a despicable person. How can he be worthy of such a good sword?" The sudden turn of events and the stimulation was too overwhelming. In a moment of desperation, the imbalance in their hearts was like a tsunami, causing the three of them to toss the basic respect they had for their elders to the back of their minds. The three of you are the ones who are narrow-minded and sneaky. It's completely undisguised envy, jealousy, and hatred. But heaven blesses the kind. This sword is mine anyway, what can you do about it? Dong Qianling kept the sword in his hand and gripped it tightly, beaming like a blooming chrysanthemum. "Thank you, boss, for bestowing this sword upon me." Yun Yang replied calmly, "As long as you don't let this sword down, it'll be the greatest gratitude you can give me." This sword had its origins. It was found among He Hanqing's belongings. To most people this sword was an unparalleled weapon, but to Yun Yang, who already possessed the divine edge, this sword was not much stronger than a chicken rib. After all, there was no comparison between it and the divine edge, so he really did not take it to heart. Besides, he had a powerful companion like Emmy, so he could have as many swords as he wanted. Even weapons that were much better than the spirited cow were within his reach and had been with him since a long time ago. Naturally, he did not treasure them at all, nor did he care about the reputation of the sword. He had simply given it away, not taking it seriously at all. Furthermore, he could use this sword to end the ill-fated relationship between Dong Qianling and the little fellow. No matter how he looked at it, it was worth it. However, this was a genuine and worthwhile transaction, causing the other three young masters to look at Yun Yang with green eyes. "Boss, that was obviously casting pearls before swine." The three of them could only feel darkness before their eyes, feeling hopeless. Such a divine weapon, how could it be given to Dong Qianling for no reason? Even if it was plunged into a cesspool, we wouldn't feel so bad. The resentful gazes of the three noble young masters made Yun Yang uncomfortable. All right, let's start training the mystical beasts now. All of you are idle all day, I still have a lot of things to do," Yun Yang said. Dong Qianling unsheathed the treasured sword, spirited Krite, waving it casually in his hand. The moment his mystical chi was infused into the treasured sword, the sword straightened with a clang, gleaming with a cold gleam. Dong Qianling was delighted, retracting his mystical chi once more. The sword softened again like a real snake. When you don't use mystical chi, can't you use it as a whip? What a treasure. Dong Qianling pretended to be surprised. It seems like it can be used as a saber. It can be used as a stick, f*ck me, it can actually, Dong Qianling waved the sword in a disorderly manner. The three young masters gritted their teeth, wishing they could rush forward and kill him for his treasure. "Young master, don't show off your wealth, lest others be wary of you," an expert from the Dong family reminded him. "Ah, yes. You must be wary of despicable people." Dong Qianling readily accepted the advice, immediately pulling out the belt that was originally around his waist and tossing it aside, abandoning it like a pair of worn-out shoes. With a click, he had already wrapped the treasured sword, spirited Krite, around his waist. The position of the treasured sword's hilt could be used as a belt buckle, the flood dragon's head brimming with vigor. Dong Qianling paced back and forth a few times with his hands behind his back, his belly bulging as he said proudly, "Do I have the elegance of a generation sword demon? Do I have the rebirth of a sword demon?" Everyone's eyebrows twitched. You really don't have the elegance of a generation sword demon. However, when it comes to the elegance of a generation sword demon, you really do. Don't show off your wealth, what an insightful view. Dong Qianling tied the belt on the outside, even his long robe. He patted the hilt of the sword and said with a smile, "Especially in front of these three fellows, I can't show off my good stuff. Who knows who's the despicable one? What if they're being coveted?" He caressed the treasured sword, spirited Krite, fondly, and his eyes disappeared from his grin. "They won't stop at coveting it. They'll really snatch it. It's better to nip it in the bud than to nip it in the bud." Everyone was exasperated. "You're already showing off so much, isn't this showing off? Just by looking at your actions, it's only right that they rob you. Your father won't believe you. Your King showing off. Chiao Yun-san said indignantly, do you want to strip off your clothes and wrap this sword around your little B** teeth to show off? Dong Qianling turned a deaf ear to him as he paced back and forth in front of Chun Wanfeng and the other two in glee. Spirited Kreit's hilt shone brightly under the sunlight, dazzling the trio. This is great. So comfortable. I like it so much. Wow. It suits me so well. Ao. This is my sword, my sword, my sword. La 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 la. Dong Qianling wiggled his buttocks as he swayed back and forth in front of Chun Wanfeng and the other two coquettishly. So King despicable. Chapter 318. The three of them fiercely spat out a mouthful of saliva and turned their heads away with all their might. However, they had used too much force and twisted their necks out. With a crack, they nearly broke their necks. Turning their heads, they looked at Yun-yang sadly, their heads hung low in dejection. This was too much of a blow, boss. This was too much of a difference in treatment. Yun-yang looked up at the sky, thinking to himself, how would you fellows know what Dong Qianling has lost for this sword? If you knew, you would feel very balanced. But I can't tell you. It's true that heaven blesses the kind, but those who don't. Dong Qianling doesn't have a mystical beast cub now. Do you all have none? Bring them out quickly. I haven't taken a close look yet. Yun-yang urged anxiously, but he was actually trying to divert his attention. The three young masters were dejected. After this turn of events, the excitement and joy he felt from obtaining the luminary paste had long since vanished without a trace. The three of them then looked at their injured little mystical beast cub, and all of them had the urge to strangle it to death. It was this little thing that didn't live up to expectations. It couldn't enter the eyes of the boss. It made me lose the chance to obtain a matchless famous sword. I hate it. The next few days passed. After the residence of Yun was overcrowded, it changed again, turning the entire place into a zoo. Whitey Big Whitey, Whitey 2, Whitey 3, Whitey 4, Whitey 5, and Gigi. These were Yun-yang's direct subordinates. As for the three-eye boar, 10,000 catty bear, black-winged tiger cub, these outsiders had officially joined the family. The three-eye boar was named Hero by Chiao Yun-san. The 10,000 catty bear was naturally named Hero by Xia Bingchuan. The black-winged tiger was named King by Chun Wanfeng. These three names? Forget black-winged tiger. However, Hero and Hero were paired with the three-eye boar and the 10,000 catty bear. The name made Yun-yang's balls twitch a little. How dare you all? Can't you all be a little more restrained? 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. In these 7 days, Yun-yang basically did not step out of his house. He was completely focused on being a beast tamer, paying no attention to what was happening outside of his house. Outside, there were always two pairs of eyes watching the residence of Yun. The young master and the black-robed elder had been watching this place for 4 days. It did not take them much effort to find out that Ji Lingxi had once interacted with this young master of the residence of Yun and that it was the only place she had ever stayed. Therefore, to the target Tiantang City, this was the most suspicious place. However, even after observing for 4 days, the master and servant did not discover any abnormalities. If Yun-yang was the one who had saved the two girls previously, or if he was related to Supreme Wind and had asked him to save the two girls, he should not be so calm. To be so calm, either Yun-yang did not know about the two girls at all, or he was so mentally strong that he did not reveal any flaws. As for the third possibility, which was that he had something to rely on and didn't take him seriously at all, this possibility was directly ignored by the young master. After a few days of observation, the young lord came to a few conclusions. Firstly, Yun-yang was a person with mediocre abilities, perhaps an ant. Secondly, there were no signs of a surpassing expert in the residence of Yun. The few people on the surface had average abilities as well. No matter what the relationship between Supreme Wind and Yun-yang was, he was either not in the residence of Yun or he was just a silver spear tip that looked strong in appearance. Although the elite experts of the 4 noble families had officially entered the residence of Yun, the young master and servant's abilities were almost on par with Ling Xiaozui's level. The experts of the 4 families were only slightly stronger ants to him. Having come to such a conclusion, the young master and servant naturally had no more scruples. Their actions were even more brazen, no longer concealing themselves. Young master, this young master Yun is truly a rare genius in terms of talent alone, the black-robed elder said in a low voice. I've noticed this since a long time ago. The young lord nodded and said, but he only has a rare talent. His physique is too mixed and the cultivation method he's learning isn't right at all. Even though he has some achievements now, he's destined to never reach the pinnacle in this lifetime. The black-robed elder nodded and said, It's really a pity. The innate golden jade body is rare even where we come from. He's the perfect talent to cultivate the way of the sword. Why did he choose the cultivation method that isn't right at all? Not only that, his aptitude is so mixed. This can be considered an anomaly. The young lord smiled and said, his talent allows him to cultivate very quickly in the early stages and there's little difficulty in breaking through the bottleneck. However, once he reaches the heaven realm, his progress will slow down. Those who have been surpassed by him will continue to surpass him at that time as long as they have the opportunity. This so-called genius who has gone astray from the beginning of his cultivation will either fall at this time or be unable to recover from this setback. How can he have a future? So, the young lord concluded, this young Master Yun may look high-spirited and ostentatious now, but his future is still bleak. This is the scope of a cultivator's knowledge and experience. The lower realm is limited in their vision and will not pay special attention to the compatibility between their foundation and the cultivation method they cultivate. Can't be helped. The black-robed elder said, but we've been observing for 4 whole days and there seems to be nothing unusual in this residence of Yun. Could this be strange? The young lord said faintly, it's normal for there to be no abnormalities at the moment. If there were, wouldn't it be too easy for us to find out? That would be strange. The black-robed elder said, yes, you're right, young master. Actually, it's not necessarily that there's nothing unusual. There are so many mystical beasts gathered here, and those mystical beast cubs obviously belong to the 4 noble families. I'm afraid there's more to this than meets the eye. The young lord looked at the residence of Yun from afar and said faintly, could it be that this young Master Yun is actually a beast tamer? The black-robed elder said, the thinking of the people in the lower realm is different from ours. Their cultivation path is narrow and they don't know how to walk the road ahead. Even if young Master Yun is a beast tamer, it's not that surprising. Also, the feng shui of this residence of Yun is superb. The young lord said, the layout of the houses here is ingenious and famous. Just based on the feng shui of this place, the spiritual qi of heaven and earth can be gathered. The young lord said, this can be understood just by looking at the flora and fauna in this place. Combining these points, this young Master Yun's family background is probably not as simple as a marquis of the imperial court. A solemn look of contemplation flashed across the young lord's eyes. Think of a way to get close to him. On the other side, Yun Yang closed his eyes and channeled spiritual qi to confirm the current situation of the 3 mystical beasts, preparing to officially start the training process. These 3 mystical beast cubs had been left to roam in his residence for 7 days. Although it was not obvious to humans during these 7 days, the mystical beasts were very sensitive to the changes in the surrounding spiritual qi of heaven and earth. The cubs had gone from being sick and lethargic in the beginning to being lively and scurrying about. Furthermore, with Yun Yang's gradual training, these little fellows were showing signs of becoming enlightened and wiser. How long had it been? Faced with such a miraculous situation, the experts of the 4 noble families were dumbfounded, almost unable to believe what they were seeing. It was only now that they fully acknowledged the words of the 4 noble young masters. It seemed that this young Master Yun was not an ordinary person. The 3-eye boar's plump body was rolling and leaping with all its might, scurrying back and forth, but it came over immediately with Yun Yang's call. It was extremely obedient. There was also the 10,000 catty bear, supporting its cumbersome body with its 2 thick legs, looking charmingly naive, but it was also executing Yun Yang's orders meticulously. The black-winged tiger was thought to be the most unsociable and different from other flying mystical beasts, but it was as obedient as Yun Yang. Such an instantaneous training method was unheard of and unseen. It was like a miracle. Hero. Come roll. Hero. Come walk upright for me to see. King. Turn around. The experts had observed Yun Yang closely for the past few days and confirmed that the strange hand gestures, incantations, and actions he had displayed were still unknown, but they were all effective against mystical beasts. When he was training the 3 mystical beasts, it was obvious that he was improving the beasts' innate weaknesses. Given time, the future of the mystical beast cubs would be bright. The 3-eye boar and the 10,000 catty bear were clumsy, so he had trained them to run and move frequently, focusing on cultivating their agility. As for the black-winged tiger, it was agile, so he focused on cultivating its lethality and training its patience. Basically, the expected direction of each step was very clear, and it could be seen at a glance. Other than that, there was also a mysterious and inexplicable aura around Yun Yang that was passively urging the mystical beasts to improve and be obedient, changing their innate habits bit by bit. It was also this point that was the most inconceivable to everyone. However, Yun Yang had really done it, and he had done it right in front of them. The group thought about it and felt relieved. If Yun Yang did not have such a skill, he would not have boasted that day. It was impressive enough that he could train the mystical beasts, but it would be futile if he said that he did not have a way to deal with the mystical beasts. Yun Yang's claim of being able to transform the mystical beasts and break through the shackles of their innate talents was still an unreachable distance. But there was already hope. It was no longer unreachable. It was because of this reason that the experts of the four noble families had changed their attitudes. From skepticism and suspicion, their gazes had turned into admiration, and even worship. If this Shen beast cub could really advance, then wouldn't the clan's hope start from here? In their eyes, Yun Yang was now an omnipotent immortal. Everyone was brimming with hope and energy. As long as they completed this, it would be a great merit when they returned to their families. Chapter 319. However, the guards were well aware of this. No matter how much they contributed, they had to wait until they returned home. Now, however, before this matter was completed, there was no need to be careful. They had to protect their young master, the mystical beasts, and especially young Master Yun himself. However, during the training process, everyone also felt that something was not right. The mystical beasts in the residence of Yun seemed to be divided into different levels. No, it should be said that the difference between the levels of the mystical beasts was clear and obvious. For example, the phantom vulture that had just arrived was obviously ostracized. The lightning cats ignored it, staying far away from it as if they were afraid of being stained by the stench. On this point, everyone expressed their understanding. They completely understood. After all, the phantom vulture was hated by almost all living creatures. Everyone knew this. Everyone shared the same thought. Therefore, it was completely understandable that the phantom vulture had sought out its master, Yun Yang, for protection. It was closer to young Master Yun, so it followed him all the time. After all, Yun Yang seemed to be the only one who was happy to see it. However, what was up with the lightning cats? Why did they come to bully our three-eye boar and 10,000 catty bear? They even bullied the black-winged tiger. What was going on? We were all 8th level mystical beasts. Even if our true abilities were debatable, we were still 8th level mystical beasts. This bloodline could not be faked. What level were the lightning cats? Did they eat bear hearts and leopard guts? How dare they bully upper-level mystical beasts? Was this not provoking the Tai Sui? However, young Master Yun was obviously protecting his lightning cats. Once there was any conflict between the mystical beasts, young Master Yun would appear immediately and summon the lightning cats back, as if he was afraid that they would be wronged. The crowd could understand this. The lightning cats were only beginner-level mystical beasts. Even if the 10,000 catty bear, three-eye boar, and the other 3 mystical beasts were newborns, their levels were still there. As long as the superior's aura erupted, the lightning cats would not be able to withstand it. It was possible that they would be scared to death. However, they were still slightly dissatisfied with Yun Yang's attitude. It was understandable that his mystical beasts were biased, but did he have to treat the lightning cats as treasures? Wasn't he being too petty? As the group of Shen beasts interacted with each other for a long time, these lightning cats actually developed the arrogance of a direct descendant. Arrogant and full of himself. It meowed every day and pushed the three-eye pig and the 10,000 catty bear over and over again. The experts from the 4 major families were all gritting their teeth in pain. He couldn't help but feel that this matter didn't seem reliable, that something was wrong and so on. Could it be that we have no choice but to lower our heads when we are under the eaves, so even our Shen beasts have to have this kind of awareness? Every day the first to come out would be the unloved phantom vulture GG, followed by the lightning cats who would line up and come out lazily. Sometimes 4 would appear, sometimes 5, but no one could tell which one was which. After all, they looked exactly the same. At most, there was a slight difference in their stature. Over time, everyone gradually got used to it. After all, as long as their mystical beasts could advance in level, nothing else would be a problem. After all, from the fact that the lightning cats dared to bully superior mystical beasts without suffering any backlash, one could see young Master Yun's training skills from the side. This itself was already very much against the natural laws of mystical beasts. Starting from the 7th day, Yun Yang called the 3 young masters to one side and taught them the art of beast taming alone. This move immediately struck the experts' worries and they could not help but feel more at ease. Young Master Yun was indeed a meticulous person. He was meticulous in his handling of this matter. Too meticulous. However, Dong Tianling was even more idle now. This fellow had been playing around with his sword and swordsmanship for the past few days. He was having so much fun and was in high spirits. However, after Yun Yang had taught the other three young masters the art of beast taming, no one bothered with him anymore. The three young masters were already sick of his antics. Now that they had serious matters to attend to, they naturally devoted themselves to the great task of taming mystical beasts. After playing by himself for a few days, Dong Qianling finally felt bored. After all, whether it was his antics or swordsmanship, there needed to be an audience. If he were to play alone, who was he going to show his antics to? Want to go out for a drink? Dong Qianling called out loudly, as if he was afraid that no one could hear him. No one responded. I'll treat. I said I'll treat. Who's going? I'll treat you to anything. He shouted again, this time raising his voice by a notch. Still no one responded. I'll go alone if all of you don't want to go. Don't regret it. There won't be another chance like this if you miss this opportunity. Dong Qianling yelled at the top of his lungs once more. Scram? The three young masters shouted in unison, joining forces to scold him. F***ck, the three of you are refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit, aren't you? Your father wishes all of you to raise your mystical beasts into phantom vultures. Dong Qianling walked out while cursing, casually looking for a hotel to drown his sorrows in alcohol. His guards shook their heads and sighed. Finally, one of them was chosen to follow him through a rock-paper-scissors game. Yes, it was a game. Now the loser was to follow Dong Qianling. Who would be the winner? This bunch of bastards. Not a single one of them is willing to accompany me. Dong Qianling gulped down the wine and ate the meat, his face still filled with anger. His eyes were slanted and his hat was askew. One of his legs was still propped up on the chair, his face and mouth covered in oil. He scolded as he ate, all of them are bad. Sooner or later your father will teach them a lesson. The guard beside him lowered his head, rolling his eyes when he made sure that Dong Qianling could not see him. They have important matters to attend to, all right? Do you think they're all as idle as you are? You're not going to play with your sword today, are you starting to play with your mouth? Old fatty. Dong Qianling's eyes began to shine as he suddenly recalled something. Young master, I'm old Pang, not old fatty. I'm not old fatty. The guard looked at his own bony figure miserably. When did you see me getting fat? Yes, old Pang. Dong Qianling followed the advice and leaned over, lowering his voice. Think of something, get me some medicine. Old Pang quivered. Medicine? What medicine? What do you want? What medicine? What for? Dong Qianling looked at old Pang as if he was looking at an idiot. Of course, it's a tonic for their mystical beasts. Tonic? Old Pang was in a bad mood. How could you be so kind? Who would believe you? It's not the kind that's fatal, and it doesn't have to be a colorless, tasteless, rare medicine. A normal laxative will do, or an aphrodisiac will do. As long as it can make their mystical beasts in a bad state for a month. Dong Qianling gritted his teeth. All of them are F***king ignoring me? How dare they? I'm not in a good state, but they've thought it through? Old Pang felt like he was about to faint. He was now doubting whether his luck was the lowest in this world. Otherwise, how could he have lost the rock-paper-scissors game today? Or else, someone else would have been the one sitting here instead. Tell me, how do I complete this mission? As long as it's not fatal? You're using an aphrodisiac on mystical beasts that are not even a month old? Laxative? Making them in a bad state for a month? You're obviously not going to stop until you torment them to death. If something really happens in the end, you'll be fine, but I'll definitely become the scapegoat. Most importantly, I might not be the only one who's done for, my entire family might have to pay the price. Will it work? Dong Qianling was excited. No, this won't work. Old Pang shook his head like a rattle drum. Old Pang, do you know why you've been promoted so slowly in our family? Dong Qianling squinted. It's because you're too timid. How big of a deal is it? How big of a deal is it? You've offended 3 noble families in one go. How big of a deal do you think it is? If this fellow in front of him was not his own young master, Old Pang felt that he would definitely be enraged and beat this bastard to death before whipping his corpse for 3 days. I'll let you say I'm timid. Your father will let you see how much courage I have. Just as Dong Qianling was cursing, he suddenly saw a young master dressed in white walking in with a black-clothed follower. Wherever he went, a fragrant breeze seemed to follow him. The young master dressed in white had an elegant demeanor. His features were elegant, his physique was tall, and his temperament was superb. One look and you could tell that he came from a high and mighty family. No matter in any aspect, he had an outstanding aura. However, Dong Qianling rolled his eyes and lowered his head to eat. Great young Master Dong Qianling had always boasted that he was the natural enemy of all elegance in this world. No matter how extraordinary a person was, as long as great young Master Dong Qianling saw them, he would be displeased. Why are you more handsome than me? Why are you more elegant than me? Why are you more elegant than me? It's all King pretense. If this young master were to pretend, I wouldn't be any worse than you. I just don't want to pretend, you country bumpkin. Originally, with Yun Yang's extraordinarily outstanding appearance, he should not have gotten along well with Dong Qianling. However, the world was mysterious. When both of them had first met, Yun Yang had displayed his pretentious popinjay side which had won Dong Qianling's favor. Dong Qianling had taken a liking to Yun Yang at once. Thereafter, Dong Qianling had subconsciously sensed that hidden popinjay aura in Yun Yang's words and actions. He had been more than willing to bow down to Yun Yang and call himself a little brother. However, the other elegant young masters and handsome youths were all an eyesore to Dong Qianling, no exception. However, Dong Qianling's mood was unprecedentedly low at this moment. He really did not have the mood to cause trouble for others. He decided that as long as the young master did not loiter in front of him, he would be merciful and not kill. However, if the young master were to meet him again, he would immediately smack the young master's demeanor into his buttocks. He did not want to provoke the young master, but the young master had taken the initiative to approach him. Oh? The young master in white saw Dong Qianling and his eyes shone. This young master is obviously a dragon among men. When this young brother sees you, I immediately feel a sense of regret for not having met you earlier. I wonder if this young master is interested in having a drink with me? This young brother will be the host. Old Pang's face twitched subconsciously. Brother, where did you see that my young master is a dragon among men? How dare you come up to strike up a conversation at this time? You've got guts. Look at my young master's expression when he rebukes you. Indeed. You're a wretch? Dong Qianling tilted his head and looked up. How wretched are you? Chapter 320. The young master in white was stunned. What did he mean? What did he mean? The young master in white could not be blamed for not understanding. Although Dong Qianling was speaking in human language, it was rare for a normal person to understand the meaning behind his words. At least, the young master in white did not understand. You can tell that I'm a dragon and phoenix among men? Dong Qianling continued his barrage. Where's the dragon? Where's the phoenix? Hurry up and tell me. I've always been curious about these two. I've admired them for a long time. The young master in white was dumbfounded once again. Was this fellow human? What kind of language art was he using? Regret not meeting earlier? Your feelings are too King rich. Dong Qianling pulled a long face. The young master in white glared, finally understanding what kind of person Dong Qianling was. His hands were already trembling. How could this bastard be so cheap? This young master has never seen such a cheap person in his life. However, Dong Qianling continued, have a drink with you? Who the *CK do you think you are? How dare you say you want to have a drink with me? Are you the host? Do you think your father isn't rich? Do you think I'm short of your wine money? Do you think you're worthy for your father to condescend? The young master in white sucked in a deep breath, obviously unable to hold it in any longer. Anyone with some ability or background would not be able to hold it in. It was not surprising. Just as he was about to explode, Dong Qianling had already taken the initiative. He was ready to vent all the pent-up frustration that he had accumulated today on this uninvited fellow. Young Master Dong had been holding it in for 8 days. Dong Qianling felt like he was going to explode if he did not vent it. Coincidentally, there was a fool who had come along today. How could he not make use of such a heaven-sent opportunity? Dong Qianling sprung up and slammed the table, shouting angrily, You country bumpkin, have you forgotten your name because you have so much money? Do you have to come out and show off? Do you think you're putting on airs because you have so much money? Do you think you can enter the upper class just because you've become weightless? You're the host? *CK your host. Do I know you? Do you know who your father is? Don't you know I'm in a very bad mood right now? You're like *King dumb donkey. Didn't your family teach you the rules of Jianghu when you're outside? Do you want me to teach you how to behave? The white-dressed man was confused again. This time, not only was he stunned, even the black-robed old man beside him was stunned. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that he, who had gracefully and elegantly invited him with a smile and a heart full of enthusiasm, would end up eating a big hot fart instead. Moreover, it was the kind that had feces mixed in it. This was truly a tragedy that was too horrible to look at. You? The white-robed young master's lips trembled. What about you? You don't know how to speak now? If you don't know how to speak, then go home and learn. You can't even speak clearly, yet you still want to pretend? Don't you think you're ridiculous? Wasn't that shameful? Do you still have any of that? Dong Qianling's aura was unstoppable, his demeanor soaring to the heavens. Me? The white-dressed young master's face had already turned blue. What about me? Dong Qianling rolled his eyes. Are you King having a seizure? You won't die from anger, will you? Are you sure you won't die from anger? Won't you? Won't you? I'll continue to scold you if you don't. Look at you. You're stammering and you can't even speak clearly. You look like you're not a good person at a glance. Are you a rapist? Are you a rapist? The rapist case in Tiantang City a few days ago was committed by you, wasn't it? You scum. If you don't speak, I'll take it as an admission. You wicked rapist. Today, I'm going to enforce justice on behalf of the heavens and rid the people of this evil. Dong Qianling hollered, Old Pang? Old Pang lifted his head in horror, his face pale and pale. How did he become a rapist after just a few words? Old Pang, really can't keep up with our young master's train of thought. Dong Qianling shouted, What are you waiting for? Take down this rapist and send him to the magistrate for punishment. I didn't expect to solve such a huge case when I'm out in plain clothes today. You wicked rapist. You're called Verger Glider, right? Am I right? Isn't it Verger Glider? I knew it was you. King Verger Glider, I'm going to catch you today. How many innocent virgins' blood debts are in your hands? Dong Qianling remembered Yun Yang's teachings firmly. If you want to stir up trouble, you must first stand on the moral high ground. In any case, Dong Qianling felt that he had already stood firm today. I'm going to get rid of the scourge for the people today. I'm going to enforce justice on behalf of heaven. I'm going all out today. I'm going to use my hot-bloodedness to reward my confidants, to spend my youth to write a legend. Dong Qianling slammed the table with a loud bang. Take him down. However, just as he finished his sentence, he felt a suffocating murderous aura. It was a bone-chilling coldness. The young master in white's expression changed from initially amiable to shock, to stupefaction, to rage, and finally to uncontrollable rage. Suddenly he regained his composure. Not only did his eyes emit a chilling glint, his body was no longer trembling. There was also a formless pressure that appeared along with the change in his attitude, looming over Dong Qianling. How dare you? The young master in white said coldly, Ever since this young master was born, no one has ever dared to speak to me like this. Come, child, you're very courageous. Say a few more words, let this young master broaden his horizons. Feeling the intense murderous aura and the immense pressure that only he could feel, Dong Qianling almost peed his pants on the spot. There was only one thought in his mind at that moment. Oh my God, have I kicked a metal plate again? Why am I so unlucky? Why do I always end up kicking such indestructible metal plates? This metal plate in front of me doesn't seem to be much weaker than Ling Xiaozue? Recalling the words he had just uttered, Dong Qianling only wanted to do one thing now. If he could swallow those words, his mouth would be as big as a wash basin. As the other party's words reached his ears, Dong Qianling quivered, but a fearless sense of freedom rose within him. Since he had already scolded him, death was death. This young master was going all out. Didn't you want to broaden your horizons again? Your father. I'll fulfill your wish, but if I were to fulfill his wish, this young master is a little afraid of death. What do you mean? Dong Qianling straightened his neck, trying to look tough. I'll say a few more words just because you want me to? How embarrassing would that be? Broaden your horizons? How much money will you give me? I won't do as you wish. Young master is in a good mood today, so I'll let you go. Old Pang, let's go. Dong Qianling wanted to run away immediately. Oh my God, you scared me to death. However, it was too late to leave now. Dong Qianling's words had yet to echo in the air. Bang, bang. Dong Qianling felt as if he was flying through the clouds, flying far away. There was actually a strange period of flight before he landed heavily on the street. His entire body was in excruciating pain. His vision had turned black and he had broken 80 to 90 bones in his body. Turning his head with difficulty, he saw his guard, Old Pang, falling beside him. Old Pang? Dong Qianling's vision darkened. Why can't you beat him? Why is my luck so bad? Old Pang straightened his back and wanted to stand up, but once he heard the words, his eyes rolled back and he fainted. Why can't I beat him? Can't you see what King level he's at? It'd be a miracle if I could beat him. If I can defeat such an existence, won't I be able to challenge Ling Xiaozue? As for why your luck is so bad, don't you have any idea why your luck is so king bad? You've been cursing me like a machine gun every single day. It would be God's fault if your luck got better. Grab him? The young master in white's expression was as cold as ice. Enter the residence of Yun. He had been troubled by the lack of a reason to lower himself to befriend Dong Tianlin. However, even if he succeeded, he would still have to take a roundabout route. Although he had been scolded by this bastard, he had already beaten him half to death and vented his anger. He could even use this as an excuse to look for Yun Yang. He could face him directly. He wanted to see how this young Master Yun would handle this sudden turn of events. He wanted to see what relationship this young Master Yun had with Ji Lingxi. Yun Yang was squatting on the ground, concentrating on training the mystical beast. Hero, come here. Hero, here. King, jump. Don't move your legs when you jump. Shup, shup, shup. Do you understand now? Yun Yang asked Chen Wanfeng and the other two. The trio nodded in bewilderment. They had understood, but they did not seem to know what it meant. They did not even know what these methods could do. You don't have to understand the specifics. Just remember my gestures and slogans. Yun Yang comforted them. You've already improved a lot. With a little more practice you'll be almost there. The three young masters looked miserable. Why don't I feel any improvement? Is it really almost there? Bang. They were communicating. The door of the residence of Yun was kicked open abruptly. The two panels flew in and landed in the yard with a loud bang. Then 2 more thuds could be heard. 2 unconscious people fell in front of them. Winter was cold. Oh pang. The experts of the Dong family sprung up, each of them enraged. Who did this? There was a loud roar. I did it. A faint, icy voice rang from the door. Everyone looked towards the source of the voice, only to see 2 people walking in slowly through the open door. One was white, the other black. One was young, the other old. One was handsome and elegant, while the other was old and stooped. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.